Did I Chris. More sign, but. It's done.
You want me to try and set it up?
Yeah, it's saying I'm locked out. Oh, very good.
I'm saying on it.
Yeah. Accepted your password?
And it's gonna have to do a whole.
Yeah, it'll take a little bit. But we got a little time. I don't know why it's not working.
Leanne, you said you had a tissue. But I did.
There's tissues in the office. If you need some.
Leanne might have one.
Oh, okay.
Thank
It
you.
was just, I grabbed it out of my box. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
And then it'll be a list of shop.
Down the bottom, right? That's fine here.
You have to click on it.
Yeah,
Make sure it's
right.
there.
Nothing there. Okay.
Jealous.
Okay, it's now 6:01. We're going to call the meeting order. Again, we're going to begin with the pledge of the flag, followed by a moment of silence, please. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence, please. Roll call, please, Ms. Lawrence.
Mr. Griffith,
Present.
Mr. Hawes.
Here.
Ms. Huff. Here. Ms. McDermott. Here. Mr. Perry.
Here.
Ms. Radel.
Here.
Ms. Sedman.
Here.
Mr. Schnee.
Present.
Mr. Urban.
Here.
Mr. Vogt.
Here.
Mr. McGinley.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. We have a presentation to make this evening. There's usually a presentation that we've done out in the rotunda, a little more formal setting. Unfortunately, with the status with the COVID virus, we have to do it in a little more private situation. But we're happy to have some representatives here from the domestic violence people, and pleased that they would come and be part of this evening. Proclamation, whereas across our country and here in the county of Luzerne, domestic violence traumatizes victims, endangers children, harms families, affects workplaces, threatens communities, and crosses all racial, social, economic, and cultural boundaries. And whereas it is the goal of the county of Luzerne to reduce the incidence and effects of domestic violence on its citizens and to increase the public awareness of this problem. Whereas the county of Luzerne urges all citizens to recognize the epidemic of the domestic violence and to join in support of the programs which help alleviate domestic violence. Whereas the county of Luzerne supports the coordinated and knowledgeable response to instances of domestic violence by the first responders, service providers such as the Domestic Violence Service Center, and the criminal justice system. Now, therefore, we, the Luzerne County Council, do hereby acknowledge the problem of domestic violence, appreciate the difficult yet outstanding work which responders accomplish in fighting the problem, urge all residents of Luzerne County to be aware of the problem of domestic violence and its impact on our daily lives, and proclaim the month of October, year 2021, as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Luzerne County. I'd like to present that to Ms. Rogers. Ms. Rogers, if you so wish, certainly you would like to make some comments.
I'd like to thank you.
Well, you go to the podium, take the microphone that's there by Ms. Hughestown, right there.
Okay, this one?
No, that's
Oh,
small, and
Okay.
use it at the podium.
Oh.
Please. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for your support and genuine concern for the issue of domestic violence that is perpetrated in Luzerne County. We have had 6 fatalities last year due to domestic violence. Luzerne County ranks number 4 in the highest number of fatalities in the state of Pennsylvania. So that's pretty much, and that's behind Allegheny, Montgomery, and Philadelphia County. So I'd like to thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Additions or deletions from the voting session agenda? Adoption of the voting session agenda? So moved. Perry?
Second.
Ms. Sedman? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions? None heard, motion carries. We're now open for public comment on any agenda item. Anyone from the public who would like to speak in regards to any of the agenda items this evening? Any member of the
Mr.
public who
McGinley,
would like? Go ahead.
Chairman McGinley, Jason Carr, Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay, Mr.
over the
Carr,
last
go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. Over the last 3 years, I've participated or have been able to sit in on budget meetings as they've gone on. Every year, at the end of every year, after the budget's passed, there's been multi-million-dollar surpluses at the end of the year. 2 years ago, you wound up raising taxes on the citizens of Luzerne County, a total net of $1 million. So I was wondering if it could be explained tonight during the work session of the budget process, where has that almost $11 million gone over the last 3 years between the budget surpluses and the $2 million that's been raised on property owners? And then secondly, Can the acting county manager explain her statement that was made in the paper yesterday, where if taxes are not raised this year, there is no other choice or other option left for the manager or council than to raise property taxes next year? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Next, any other member of public, please? Anyone else from the public? Okay, if not, motion to approve the minutes of the September 28th, 2021 voting session. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Saban, second. Ms. McDermott. On the question? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Mr. Chair,
Aye.
an amendment?
No,
Wait a minute. Excuse me, Mr. Haas, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment for the minutes if I could.
Certainly. Go ahead, Mr. Haas.
Sure. On item number 6 about the tabling of the vaccine mandate, I'd like to see there in print that Councilman Haas said that council should exercise leadership by taking an up-down vote by a yes/no vote and not to postpone. I really respect the members who took a positive or negative stand against that, but we're here to make decisions and not just table stuff. So if I could put that in for the record, I'd appreciate that.
Mr.
Yes, Ms.
I
Saban.
just want to add something to that. Mr. Haas actually said a vote to postpone is a vote for tyranny. And I think that's more appropriate than leadership because he said it.
Well, excuse me, but there's some discussion on the motion to table, so I don't think any of it should be in minutes.
I agree. I don't think any of it should be in the minutes. Our minutes are supposed to be actions that are taken by council. And we did vote, and the vote is reflected in the minutes. Anybody would like to second Mr. Haas?
I'll second that for Mr. Haas to add that to the minutes.
Okay, then we'll have a roll call on whether we could add Mr. Haas's statement. Roll call, please.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes,
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
No,
Ms. McDermott? No. Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Radel?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No,
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Mr. McKinley?
No.
3 yes, 8 no.
Okay, the amendment fails. Going back, we have a motion by Ms. Sedman, second by Ms. McDermott.
I'll withdraw that.
Okay. We have a motion. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition?
No.
Mr. Urban?
no,
Mr. Griffith? Anyone else? Any abstentions? None heard, motion carries. Going over to the next page. Under agenda items, county manager, introduction of the ordinance adopting 2022 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County.
Mr.
This
McGinley,
is a,
I have old business.
we can't add anything to the agenda, Mr. Griffith, if you would.
I'm not,
told me
it's
in
old
advance,
business,
I
it's
would've-
old, it's old business. Old business,
Yeah, I
right?
understand that. We don't have any items under old business, Mr. Griffith. If you would tell me in advance what the item, all I need is a title or a statement or something, I would add it.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's the way we're gonna do it? Good deal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Then
Well,
we could
no,
add that to the
no, because
agenda.
I asked the question about the budget being added to the budget, to the minutes or to the agenda, and I was told because we're not voting on it, it doesn't have to be added to the agenda. So we're not voting on anything here. I don't see why I can't add stuff to old business.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Griffith.
I'm
Well,
sure.
I could just say, like, the question, the budget is on the agenda. What you wanted was for the budget to be added to the packet, which is a different thing than the agenda. So it was that's the accompanying documents. The budget has been on the agenda, so.
Okay, I'll just bring it up under council. That's fine. I'll bring it up under council comment.
That's fine. Thank you. Again, this is the introduction of the budget. It does not require any voting. as per the charter. Ms. Kokomo?
Chairman McGinley, esteemed council members, and all residents of Luzerne County. Thank you for joining us this evening as I present Luzerne County's fiscal year 2022 budget. This comes as what I think is a turning point in our fight against COVID-19. Over the past year, we have seen incredible need in our communities. Times of crisis require a bold and strong response. So the Luzerne County administration, along with county council, took unequaled actions to support our residents. I am proud and humbled to work with the Luzerne County employees who rose to the occasion and faced unprecedented adversity to meet the needs of the Luzerne County residents during this pandemic. These employees are still meeting the needs of the Luzerne County residents. As was our 2021 budget, our 2022 budget is shaped by one of the most unique challenges in our county's and our country's history, the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus has upended Luzerne County in ways that few of us could have imagined. Our businesses have been shuttered. Our fellow residents face new health crises and economic pressures. Luzerne County has faced our share of challenges over the years, and we have taken steps working together to reduce the inherited debt and strengthen our communities. We have taken action to right our fiscal ship, but there is work yet to be done. And so we have come to the proverbial fork in the road. Over the next few weeks, you will hear about the road that the administration has traveled to bring you this budget with no tax increases. When Brian Sweats and Danielle Conyngham, who I have the utmost gratitude for the tireless work that they have done, when we met with the division heads and the department heads in August, and after listening to the department heads' needs and requirements to maintain the high level of services, the proposed tax increase was 5%. That we knew was not workable in these times. We understand that as council members, you are the individuals that must answer directly to your constituents. We understand the pressures and difficult choices you must make. We see the shortages of goods and services and increased prices in our grocery stores. We hear the uncertainty in the voices of our neighbors. We hear the uncertainty in our own voices. We understand your responsibility to the people of Luzerne County as their elected officials. So we regrouped. We reviewed the numbers and the needs and finally had a proposed tax rate increase of 2.75%. The division and department heads will tell you over the next few weeks what their needs are to run their departments at full capacity and meet the increased demands of Luzerne County residents. Hopefully you will understand my recommendation. But we heard the voices of council members. I don't have many talents, but I understand reality. So we regrouped again and proposed a zero tax increase budget. I want to be clear, however, and I will present information to support this proposition. The county cannot sustain itself with another zero tax increase in 2023. I'll say it again to be clear. The county cannot sustain itself with another zero tax increase for fiscal year 2023. This is the last year that our fiscal health can tolerate no tax increases. When I took the position of acting county manager, I did so with the belief that I would advocate for our workers and our residents. You asked for actual numbers based on evaluations before the budget. You got it. The administration completed evaluations of employees, and the proposed merit increases are based on those evaluations. On the September 11th memorial service a few weeks ago, I vowed to stand with the Luzerne County employees. To my coworkers, I thank you. You put your lives on the line coming to work every day during the pandemic. Every day. These workers are also suffering the effects of a fragile economy. Please do not forget them. Don't belittle them by not acknowledging their contributions. These workers are your constituents too, and they are our greatest asset. One of the highlights of this job is dealing with our residents. They have a lot to offer. And over the past month, I've been corresponding and dealing with Cindy Brennan, who has a great interest in our roads. I promised her that I would highlight to council during the budget process and the public that the county must make a thoughtful effort to start repairing our roads. To repair and replace our roads, it will cost in 2021 numbers, $50 million. That is approximately $400,000 per mile. Obviously, the longer it takes to repair the roads, the costs will increase. Cindy will not be happy with me because we didn't ask for $5 million to start repairing the roads. But we can, if we work together, embark on prioritizing repairing our roads. Cindy will have a great deal to say about this. And as always, I look forward to our discussions. Road and bridges are our infrastructure and are fundamental to the economic development of the region. It's fundamental to revitalize the area and to be competitive for development in the Northeast corridor. We must revitalize our infrastructure. Take, for example, the West Nanticoke Bridge. This bridge is a critical component of our county's infrastructure. Yes, for the county, not just Nanticoke. This bridge is at a center of potential economic growth. We must embark on prioritizing, repairing, and replacing our bridges, such as the West Nanticoke Bridge and the Water Street Bridge in Pittston. You will hear as we travel this road over the next few weeks that brought us here to the 2022 budget certain repeating factors. One, like our residents, our county is experiencing increase of utility costs, health care costs, and an increase of prices for goods and services. Two, the services that must be provided to the residents of Luzerne County are increasing and becoming more complex. Three, our capital plan needs life support. Like myself, our buildings, especially the courthouse, which is an architectural gem, unlike myself, is aging rapidly. We cannot endure multiple power outages. Internal improvements are needed. For example, we need a chiller. We need updated electrical equipment. The capital plan is vital to sustain our aging structures. 4, security, security, security. Whether it is IT, elections, or the buildings themselves, we need to shore up our security. We are at a crossroads together. And the only way that this works is if we work together. Most of you are open to the administration, but this is my plea to those of who harbor animosity towards the administration. Please meet us halfway. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the budget's introduced. We will begin our hearings next Tuesday evening with a public hearing followed by a work session. And as we go through, as Ms. Kirkland indicated, the next several weeks we'll be having a meeting each week and have each the different departments and divisions come in to present their information and make their case for their budget as presented in the draft budget. We're at number 2, motion to adopt the resolution approving the forgiveness of delinquent tax interest and penalties owed to Luzerne County by the Greater Wilkes-Barre Chamber of Business and Industry. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Ms. Saban, do we have a second? Ms. McDermott? On the question? Mr. Urban, go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, I questioned the actual signature page because initially the documentation that we received were missing 2 of the previous commissioner's signatures. And then miraculously, this week, another document appears with those signatures and additional signatures on a document. If I hold them up side by side, though, you could tell that they were signed at 2 different times because some of the signatures are slightly different as far as the way that the names are curved, the placement of the signature on the actual documentation. I know the one has got a seal on it. I went back 2 weeks ago after our meeting. I looked at the minutes from 1999 from front to back. So I went from January to December, and no mention of this agreement was in any of the minutes at that time in 1999, at least in our printed commissioner meeting minutes book that's in our office in the council chambers. This agreement was supposedly done on June 9th of 1999, over 20 years ago. The commissioner meeting prior to that date was on June 2nd, and the subsequent meeting after that was June 16th. So this happened in between meetings, somehow or another. They did have a tax claim bureau section of their agenda in every meeting or at every meeting during the commissioner years. So I could not see where it was brought up at all to consummate this agreement on behalf of the county. But when I printed these off, and if you even do an overlay on the signatures, you could tell that some of these signatures, like Donald under Wright Township, the D is curved differently. The date is still missing at the bottom where it says consented to this blank day of blank 1999. Mr. Baruch's name, the way he spells with the S in Stephen, one of them has a curve, a comma in between it, and the other one, as he starts his signature, the line is actually to the right of the comma. So, no photocopier is going to make that much of a mistake. I want to see the original document that was executed at the time. I want to see the ink marks. I want to see the raised seal. I've asked our clerk to actually send me the original documents obtained from WECO so I can look at them forensically. Because back then, we know what kind of transpired in those years. I just want to make sure that that was consummated correctly. I don't feel comfortable on voting on, I wouldn't be comfortable voting on something like this. And you're talking about over $382,000 to forgive. And then we're talking about, roads, we're talking about LCTA looking for money. We're talking about, the potential of raising taxes. Every sort of annual cycle when it comes to the budget, that $382,000, the county could use it. In the chamber, obviously, they made these agreements back in the day initially, and then years later, they come back looking for forgiveness. And I think they need to hold their end of the bargain and pay the entire amount in full. And maybe we could take the $550,000 that's owed and potentially offset it, maybe with LCTA, or offset it in some other area where the county needs it. It's just, in my opinion, another giveaway if you vote in the affirmative on this resolution. But I really want to look at the original documents to see how these were consummated, because the signatures don't align. That means that they really were signed at two different times, because there's two sets of documents. And I want to look into it a lot further because they don't align. And I have both signature pages here. And if you want to take a look at them, you can look at them. But if you look at Donald's name, you can tell the curve in the D is different. And even Mr. Baruch's name is different.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Winkle, you're with us?
Yes. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear.
Okay, so let me, if I could, since there's an awful lot in that statement, basically address all of it. But let me start with the question about the signatures. If you take a look at the July 9th note that Fred Lohman, who was a CFO at that time, had forwarded on, it indicated that there were 5 original copies. So in other words, those 5, those signatures would be probably a little different because there are 5 of them, 5 original documents, of which, by the way, that one, we actually do have in our possession the actual wet signatures. So that would explain that. But I think what I'd like to do is step back, if it's okay, to basically kind of address kind of that issue, as well as also the 1999 tax day agreement. So, thank you, Council Chair McGinley and County Council, for the opportunity to discuss our resolution request for an adjustment of the Poseidon Pool delinquent taxes to reflect the terms of the 1999 tax stay agreement. Per the question that came up in the working session, we did find one of the 5 original copies of the wet signatures of all 3 county commissioners, the tax bureau director, Wright Township, Crestwood School District authorities, and witnessed and embossed by the township and county stamps as a legally binding document. I'd submitted the copy of the document to council that you can find in your packet for review, as was indicated, and also made the original open if you guys wanted to take a look at it during the last week. With the inclusion of the signatures, including the tax bureau director at that time, now serving as a legally binding document, let me review the resolution with you and ask for your affirmative vote so I can move the property to settlement. So here's the background. The July DEP Act 2 clearance on the former Poseidon property on 280 Crestwood Drive, Wright Township, now enables us to move forward with a clean DEP vote of approval that the Poseidon Pool property has been properly mitigated, cleaned up, and now can be sold to bring back into our local economy. Now, after seeing the property lay idle for 20 years, our final obstacle is a settlement, is to change the current Poseidon taxes due by the Luzerne County Tax Bureau to reflect the terms of the 1999 tax day agreement, limiting penalties and interest to 10% per Article 4. To place this in perspective, this agreement was done in recognition to the fact that when the chamber took on the project in 1999, it was a contaminated brownfield site that couldn't be developed without significant time and money to remove the contaminated structure and clean up the site. And it should be noted that the cleanup amounted to over $2 million invested to mitigate the property and make it once again economically feasible. The approval of the resolution before council today is not so much a request for forgiveness, but to reflect the 1999 tax day agreement signed off by the county that pays the face value principal in full and adjusts the penalties and interest at 10%, reflected in the amount of $174,937.57 owed by the chamber per the terms of that agreement, which we fully plan to do. Approving this resolution makes way for the settlement of the property, fulfilling the following. One, the development of a $6 million flex site for manufacturing, distribution, or warehousing to bring more jobs and businesses to the county. Two, the full payment per the terms of the tax stay agreement on the remaining principal, interest, and penalties assessed at $174,937.57. Three, the full payment per the terms of the county HUD BDLP loan in the amount of $925,000. Four, the combined payments of over $7 million in debt obligations to the county, as promised when I first met with the council in 2014. And five, to place this all in perspective, it should also be noted that the 5 industrial parks created by the chamber to reclaim mine-scarred land as the entity of last resort has today created and attracted over 250 businesses in those parks with over 15,000 jobs and an annual tax base to the county, municipalities, and school districts of over $10 million of taxes annually from just the commercial real estate assessments. So I would be remiss as I go into retirement at the end of this year if I didn't at least set the record straight that your chamber really has delivered to the county and the community in its obligations, in serving its mission to the community, and then the multi-million annual tax base it has created. In conclusion, I ask for your yes vote on our resolution so that we complete our debt obligations to the county with the $174,000 payout per the full term of the 1999 county signed tax day agreement and the $925,000 remainder due on the county HUD BDLP loan. It's not really an ask for forgiveness. It's a request to adhere to the terms of the county signed 1999 tax day agreement, and again fulfills our promise to pay back the $7 million in debt obligations as the chamber exits the real estate businesses and refocuses on our mission to innovate, connect, and elevate the valley. I'll remain on the Zoom for any questions and to stay for what I hope will be a unanimous vote to adjust the tax bureau taxes and allow me to move to settlement on the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one
Mr. McGinley?
more question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wico, would you have a copy of the minutes that was approved at 1999?
No, so I wouldn't have a copy of that. So what I did was when the question came up, I re-looked at the document that was sent out and noted that there were 5 copies, which meant that it should have come back to us. So I had our team go check through our files and we came across the document, with the wet signatures and the stamp, you know, from the county, as well as also the township, as well as also the tax bureau director's signature on it. All the wet ink is there. We have a copy of our original copy that was sent from one of the 5.
But wouldn't it be standard practice for you to put the minutes from all 3 taxing entities, the school district, the municipality, and the county, with a document of that magnitude to keep a record so you know that it was approved by the county?
So the answer to that, Walter, would be no, because if you think about it, the township certainly, you know, went ahead 2 years ago and we paid them off on it. And if you look also at the school district, we did the same with them. So clearly the document that we provided was acceptable to them. And so we thought the same with county council. And so from that perspective, no, we don't. This is what we have.
Okay.
But it is, by the way, again, with the wet signatures, it is an original document from that tax day agreement.
And I did some research through the newspaper archives, Times Leader and Citizens Voice together, and I found nothing in 1999. I searched under Wilkes-Barre, Greater Wilkes-Barre Chamber. I searched under Tom Mikowski. I searched under any possible way that I could bring up a news article that actually could shed some light on what actually happened in 1999. And there is absolutely nothing in the newspaper anywhere about this agreement, about a tax stay or anything like that. So I'm really kind of concerned about the fact that there's nothing in the commissioner's book. There's nothing in the newspapers, but you have documents with wet signatures. And I'm not saying that they're not authentic. All I'm saying is, it would seem that we would have better documentation on something of this magnitude in order to move forward with this.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I was running North America for a corporate entity at the time, so I have no idea what happened in 1999. However, I will say to you that this is a bona fide, fully executed contract with wet signatures and embossed with the stamps of the county and the townships, as well as again the signature of the tax bureau director. That's all I can say.
I understand. In closing, Mr. McGinley, the only thing that I can say regarding this agreement is, we're looking at giving, not forgiveness, it's an adjustment here for $174,000 in payment to release this lien or property out. And I will ask the question of members of council as well as anybody else who might want to chime in is, I wonder how many city or county residents have ever come to the county asking for tax forgiveness so they wouldn't lose their house at some point. I don't think in all the years I've been involved in county government, I don't think I've ever seen a resident put in a proposal to the county and ask them to forgive their taxes so they wouldn't lose their house or so they could put it back on the tax rolls. Yet constantly this past 2 years, we've seen corporation after corporation after corporation come to this council and ask for forgiveness or adjustments of some sort. I think it's time we take $174,000 and maybe help the residents of this county with that kind of money, not some corporation or somebody who sat on a piece of property, which this was KOZ, by the way. This property was KOZ property, correct, Mr. Wico?
This property is KOZ and continues to be KOZ based on the vote of 2 years ago. I would also add, by the way, that remember a couple things, that during the course of the last 20 years, this property, you couldn't do anything with this property until you received DEP Act 2 clearance, which we finally received in July. I would also make a comment to you, Mr. Griffin, that you're correct. I've never even seen maybe an individual come, asking for forgiveness, but I will tell you, and you even said so yourself, we're not asking for forgiveness over here. In fact, as I noted, we've already paid, once we complete this deal, we will have paid $7 million back in obligations that I said we would do back in 2014. So I am not shirking any response, asking for any forgiveness in this case. I'm asking to adhere to a contract put in place that you have to put it in context of that time period. And at that time, this was a brownfield site. And, oh, by the way, the delinquency of this taxes were not our taxes. They were taxes that were delinquent from Poseidon Pool, the pool company that went bankrupt in 1999, which we, for the right reasons, because we needed to mitigate this property, we assumed those taxes, and we're paying those taxes, full face value of those taxes, plus the 10% per the terms of the agreement. And we're clear with
and you're gonna sell the property to somebody, and they're gonna be KOZ for another, I think it's another 8 years or so, right?
Well, you guys voted on that 2 years ago, right? So, but
right.
Let me also say this is that we spent, if where you're heading on this is that we might be making any money on this, I would also tell you that It took $2.3 million to mitigate this property, actually $2.4 million to mitigate this property. So, you know, I'm not sure why you think we're shirking our responsibilities.
No, I don't think it's a matter of shirking your responsibilities. I just think what's fair to the taxpayers of this county is fair. Right now, the property is a tax exempt property. We're not gonna get a dime from that property for the next 8 years. We're gonna forgive. And I know you don't like that term, but it's an adjustment in your change of language. It's an adjustment, but we're actually going to make an adjustment of almost $400,000 in this property, or 300-some thousand. So,
Yes.
I just don't think it's fair to the taxpayers to constantly take the short end. And when they get into a bind because of COVID or whatever situation they come into and they can't pay their taxes, we're right there to take their property off and put it in tax sale, free and clear. And sorry, have a nice day for the taxpayer. So I don't think that that's a fair assessment.
And Walter, that's why I made the comment in my opening remarks that you'll notice that part of how you get taxes is, right, drawing businesses to the area. So as you noticed in those 5 industrial parks, 250 businesses, 15,000 jobs, all paying taxes, by the way, with $10 million annually of taxes just on property taxes on those buildings that are out there, not including anything else that's already going to the county, the school districts, and the municipalities. So I would tell you that, again, we're not shirking. I don't think the businesses are shirking their responsibility here at all. There's $10 million of annuity taxes that's being received.
I understand.
You know, I mean, I guess the bigger question is do you know what commissioner meeting that this was approved at? You know, I mean, I know you weren't around, but does anybody have any history on it? Does the county have an actual wet copy of this agreement? Because I would assume, because it deals with the county of Luzerne, hopefully they have some type of record of this agreement somewhere to protect the interests of the county. And then,
So Walter, if I may, are you suggesting that the wet signatures and the copy that we have is not a legitimate copy? I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to wrap my head around what your question is regarding this, because we actually have we have wet signatures of all 3 commissioners, the tax bureau person at the time, director at the time, the township, the Wright Township, Crestwood School District, and stamps, witnessed, by the way, stamps also from the county as well as Wright Township. So I'm not sure I understand why the question.
Well, because the initial handout was with only 1 commissioner signature, and if you would have sent all 3 at the other in the beginning, maybe I wouldn't have questioned it. But however, you know, as time goes on, all of a sudden, you know, this obviously miraculously appears. But I'm also asking county management on our side, do we have a copy physically in this courthouse somewhere with the wet signature and the seal in the law office or anywhere in this county? Not just, you know, on the chamber side. I mean, just because you're holding a document, you know, there should be a wet copy here as well to basically validate what you're stating. I mean, because this is a separate page too. You know, it's not like it's attached, you know, like front and back to the agreement. It's a separate page. It doesn't even have the date when it was consented on the bottom. And, you know, that's the, you know, I'm not an attorney, but that, you know, I'm assuming that it should say at least the 9th day of June 1999, but it doesn't say the 9th day. It's just blank day of 1999. So what part of 1999 was it actually consummated? December, July, January? I mean, those are the questions. I mean, I don't care what's on the first page. The last page is the signature document. This could be attached to any contract or any document among these 3 entities. And unfortunately, some of the people on here are deceased, so we can't go back and question them.
And Mr. Van Gunderson and several other people were not around at the time this was consummated.
You know, and it's not in the meeting minutes, and that's what's troubling is that it's, and there was a tax claim bureau section, and those meeting minutes were actually more thorough than the ones that we have today.
Okay. Anyone else?
So please. From our attorneys.
Mr. McGinley, I'd like to make a motion, we table this for now, so we get some more documentation. I make a motion, based on the fact that we don't have substantial documentation.
We have a table in a second, no further discussion. Roll call, if you vote to table, We remove it from the agenda. If you vote no, we come back to a vote on the information that's presented. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes, to table.
Ms. Howe?
No.
Ms. McDermott?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Oh,
Ms. Radel?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
no.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
3 yes, 8 no.
Okay. Roll call on approving the resolution as presented.
Mr. Chair, just one question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Van Gadren, congratulations on your retirement. Thanks for your service to all of us here. My question just really briefly is that why did the chamber settle with Wright Township and Crestwood School Districts years ago? And can you just walk me through the timeline about why that was the case, and why is the county the last one, if you could?
Sure. As I mentioned in the last session, I think as well as in this one, and also in the documentation that I sent in, is 2 years ago when Walter had indicated that the KOZ issue came up. We had to, because there was 3 taxing bodies, we needed to go through all 3 taxing bodies with that. And at that time, I made the offer that said that, hey, look, relative to the taxes, because we still had to go through this Act 2 clearance with DEP, and it could take a number of years, which in fact it did. It took 2 years to do it. We would be willing to pay out principal only to, for face value principal only to both the Crestwood School District and Wright Township, and they both accepted that, and we did the payout. I also offered the same to the county council. And, at that time, you guys said that you would consider it. I sent in the paperwork. I think you probably have documentation on that. And that was for face value. I also indicated and used the same number basically that I'm using today, or very close to it, because there's certainly a little bit more interest in penalty. But I also at that time said, look, here's the choices. It was like, I think 130, I got the document here, $132,000 for face value. Or if you wait how long it takes to do Act 2 clearance, then we would pay the full, 10% interest and penalty, which I stated at that time was around $170,000, and now 174, 430, whatever the 937 that we currently have. So Harry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks for refreshing my memory. So and I looked at the proposal, of course, and and it says that there's an area there about either pending the sale of the property or some date in 2021. Should the council approve this, when do you expect to see the payment of this to the county?
Yeah, so good question, Harry. And I mean, that's why it's so important that I try and get this resolution accepted tonight, because basically this is the last outstanding issue for settlement. And so once this gets approved tonight, we're going to be very quickly going to, the title agent, our legal counsel, Miracle's legal counsel, to get this to settlement. And I would tell you, I have a vested interest myself because I am retiring the end of December, and I would like to get this thing done. So I've made a commitment to my board that I want to get this done as soon as possible. I'm hoping by the end of this month, maybe, November at the latest, if we get this approved, that we will get this to settlement and we will pay out that $925,000 BDLP loan, as well as also the taxes that we're just talking about here, Harry, as you would normally do during the course of settlement, because this is certainly a lien to the settlement. So it would be done at that time. Does that answer your question, Harry?
It does. Thank you very much, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please, to approve the resolution as presented.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Mr. McGinley, the reason Mr. Urban is abstaining?
I think that like I said, I question the legality.
Did you hear that, Mr. Griffith?
Yes, I heard that. Thank you. No,
Okay.
I'm voting no, because I think it's time we give the taxpayers a cut.
Okay,
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
yes.
9 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
9 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. Thank you. Motion carries. Motion to introduce the ordinance amending the 2021 fiscal year budgets for Luzerne County, and that's for the rental assistance program. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Howe, do we have a second? Ms. Saban. Introduction of the budget amendment. Roll call, please.
Ms. McDermott? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
yes,
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Abstain for prior reasons mentioned?
I think you had, am I correct in saying, Mr. Haas, you had a tenant or someone who may access the program?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes,
10 yes, 1 abstention.
thank you. Moving down to number 4, motion to adopt a resolution declaring a vacancy on the Board of Elections and Registration. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Howe, do we have a second? Second. Mr. Snee on the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
yes,
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Abstain because of acting county manager Crocomo's signature still on the resolution.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. House?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott? Yes. Mr. McGinley?
Yes,
9 yes, 1, sorry, 10 yes, 1 abstention.
thank you. Moving down to number 5, motion to adopt the ordinance amending 2021 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County District Attorney, the LEO amendment, which we had the public meeting prior to the start of this evening's meeting. We have a motion. Present. Mr. Schnee, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Saban? On the question?
Mr. McGinley on the question.
Go ahead.
Mr. McGinley is still member. I think most council was aware that I spoke with District Attorney Sam Sanguadolce, as well as Brian Sweats, Budget and Finance Director, and Romilda regarding Acting Manager Romilda regarding this issue. And my concern with the ability for us to make this a fund as opposed to a department. And we discussed this in pretty detail about the problems that would be if we made it a fund. And that only because of the time frame between when the reimbursement comes into the DA's office as well as when the expenditures are actually made. There's a little bit of a lapse. It could be up to 30 days time frame of a lapse along the way, where the money doesn't come in time for the expenditure to actually happen. The expenditures happen before the reimbursement sometimes. So with that in mind, I wanted to change this from a fund to a department. And if that's amenable, I could make that motion to change the ordinance to change the 526 fund to a department, if that's an acceptable way to make that motion.
Mr. DeLuca. Mr. Vito,
Yes.
did you hear what Mr. Griffin proposed there, please?
I did not.
Okay, here, I'll explain.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
Mr. Griffin.
Go ahead.
1 second, and if you have to add detail, that'd be fine.
Sure.
Mr. Griffin is proposing changing the ordinance to, instead of saying fund, change it to a department for the district attorney's office. Is that permissible?
It's a budget amendment though, right, Mr. Griffith?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Brian, is there any difference between those terms from your perspective?
Vito, no. I mean, obviously what we do is different. A fund is more work for us, but again, Mr. Griffith had a conversation with us and the district attorney, and it seemed like the move to a department was easy. I think the only issue that I have is I don't know all the details of the contract. I obviously know we have employees that are getting paid a per diem rate and we're being reimbursed. I don't know if there's any vehicles or anything else in that contract. So I don't have a problem changing it to a fund or a department. I'm just not sure I can encompass all of the lines that would be needed because it's really run through the district attorney's office.
If you're asking me, could you make the motion and can council vote on it? Absolutely, but I believe their caveat would be there, just as Mr. Sweats described. We didn't review this for any potential issues.
Mr.
If you're asking from a procedural standpoint, based on what Mr. Sweats had just said, there probably is not an issue at all with amending it, but I wish this would have been something that would have been brought up in advance of the meeting. As I sit here, it's not something I'm prepared to give a legal opinion on.
Can we make a motion to postpone?
Yeah,
Wait a minute, Ms. Houck has something that she would like to.
well, right, so my question is, if you're gonna make it a department, now you go into the powers of county council in the charter, and this is, section B, I'm looking for the actual section here. It's, in 209B, to create a department, to create departments. So I guess the question is, does the creation of a department, can that be done within an ordinance that also talks about the revenues? Or is that a separate item that has to be done? You have to create the department before you can give it a budget.
Mr. DeLuca, did you hear that question?
Yeah, and I have no more of an answer for that. I think that is an insightful, that's actually more insightful than I'm prepared to give at this moment. This is why anytime there are issues with council members planning to bring up these types of questions at meetings, it needs to be done in advance. I have no opinion.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. McGinley?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Griffith.
Okay, and I apologize to Vito. I sent the emails out and I think I included him in them, but I should have probably gave him a call ahead of time to let him know what my thoughts were, and at the end of the day, what the discussion was between Mr. Sweats and everybody. So I would like to just make a motion to postpone this until we get some more insight on how we want to do this department, and maybe we could put it on the agenda for the next meeting. That'd be fine if that's acceptable to council at this moment.
Well, you're making a motion to postpone.
Yep.
Do we have a second for Mr. Griffith?
Second.
Ms. Houck?
This is an ordinance though, right?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
I mean, we've gone through this a number of times. You need 4 votes to introduce an ordinance. I got caught off guard at the last meeting because I didn't believe it wasn't something that we had reviewed because it came in at the last minute. You need 4 votes to introduce it. There's no ability to postpone. If council wishes to postpone it, then don't give it 4 votes to introduce.
No, I withdraw my second. He's right. I withdraw my second.
Ms. Houck withdraws her second, so we don't have a second for Mr. Griffith.
Okay, then we'll take the vote the way it is then. Thank you.
Okay, let's vote on it then.
Mr. McGinn, before we do that, third paragraph, it says, said services from the township. What's the township on here?
The paragraph, Mr. DeLuca says something about township, third paragraph, did you say?
Yeah, third paragraph, third whereas.
Oh, I can tell you what that is. I didn't, have anything to do with this resolution or this ordinance, But that was the question that I asked with the agreement. It was, this is right out of the agreement. And that was an error in the agreement that the DA said, agreed, I pointed that out and said it needed to be corrected.
Right.
I mean, I think we could introduce this, but.
It's introduced.
And then,
It's been introduced.
right,
We introduced it the last meeting.
oh, this is the adoption, right?
Yes, right.
So,
Yes,
well, we could vote, no.
that's right.
We can postpone a motion to adopt.
Yep, we can vote on motion.
We can't postpone a motion to introduce.
Well, we don't have a second
Well,
for
now you
that
do,
motion.
because I'll reinstate my second. This is a motion to adopt, we don't, it's not a motion to introduce.
All right, we're back to the postponement then.
Question.
Yes, second.
We all got a letter from Sam Sangodolce and, an email from him about what he felt this was a slippery slope to go down. And I agree with the DA. As he says, I believe it is inappropriate for one of 11 councilmen to be directing the budget office to change the way we account for this money. And so I think that he is the person that must make the decision on this. And I think he's right. So that's where I am.
We have a motion to postpone and a second by Ms. Houck. So if you vote yes, we postpone it. If you vote no, we come back to the vote. Roll call, please.
Ms. Radel,
No.
Ms. Edmond,
No.
Mr. Schnee,
No.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
No.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes, to postpone.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
This is the motion to postpone?
That's correct.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott? No. Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No,
4 yes,
Postpone.
7 no.
that fails. Let's make the correction instead of township. No, but let's make the correction. We have to pull township out of there in that third paragraph. And that would be district attorney's office, I believe. We have a motion to make that correction.
Presented.
Mr.
Second.
Sneed,
Second.
Ms. Saban. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? So that's been corrected. And Mr. Snee and Ms. Saban, you're okay with that correction?
Yes.
So we have that motion by Mr. Snee, second by Mr. Saban. Roll call, please. This is
On
for
the question. On the question,
Go
Mr.
ahead, we
McGinley.
have it. Go ahead.
I just to Sheila's point, this is what Sam was talking about was not the ability for us to regulate his budget. We have to, as a matter of operation, I believe in this council, make a budget amendment to account for revenues that come in that were not in the budget. This is revenue that was not in the original budget. That's why we have to create this fund. It has nothing to do with what Sam's email was regarding the ability for council to regulate how he spends his money. His issue was every time he spends money, he doesn't want one of 11 people questioning why he's spending the money. That was exactly the idea behind his email. It wasn't that we couldn't make the ordinance at all. That we have to create the ordinance because there's additional money coming in that isn't budgeted, just like we do for all the rest of them. So that's why the ordinance was created. So we can account for the money that comes in from the airport as well as the money that goes out from the airport. So that's why this fund was created, was to just make it a budgetary function. Because in 2022, he's going to have to put that in a budget, as well as 2021, as he's already getting money on.
All right. We have a motion to adopt by Mr. Sneed, second by Ms. Saban. If you vote yes, we adopt the budget amendment. If you vote no, it's not adopted. Roll call, please.
Are we voting on the amendment to change it to
The
the
amendment is
project?
already passed by voice vote. The amendment was
But we're
passed
not changing it to department. We're voting on it as is.
as is.
Okay.
No,
That's
no
my- that was
change,
my
yeah,
question.
no changes there.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes,
Mr.
Voting
Schmidt?
to approve the amendment.
yes. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, the amendment.
Yes, the amendment that's on your agenda,
The
number 5.
ordinance, the ordinance,
Wait,
not the
I thought
amendment.
it was the
It's a
ordinance.
budget amendment.
Right, yeah, but it's an ordinance.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes,
Ms. McDermott? No. Mr. Perry?
No,
Ms. Radel?
no,
Mr. McGinley?
No.
Oh.
Simon?
yes. What were we voting on?
We're voting on approving the ordinance, which is a budget amendment. That was introduced at the last meeting with 4 votes. This would be the final adoption
The Leah, right?
for the district attorney's leave.
Yes.
Okay, we have 5 yes and 6 no.
5 yes, 6 no, it fails. Number
Well, how are we
6.
account, so Mr. McGinley, if I could ask a question, how are we gonna account for this money that's coming into the county from
Well,
here?
I will work on that and try to get that information for you, Mr. Griffith, but yeah, we'll have to. see
Yeah, because
what we
it's
have to
already
do.
coming, it's already coming in.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, so it's getting dumped right in the general fund.
Okay, number 6, motion to adopt the resolution to modify the resolution 2021-101, establish the assistant position in the office of Clerk of County Council. Do we have a motion?
Presented.
Mr. Sneed, do we have a second?
second,
Ms. Howe? On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
No.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
yes,
Ms. McDermott? Yes. Mr. Perry?
yes,
Ms. Radel?
yes,
Ms. Sedman?
Yes,
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
9 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Okay. Number 7, motion to allow Robert Bilbo to advertise Luzerne County property for sale. This came from a work session as a recommendation from our real estate committee. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. McDermott, do we have a second?
second,
Second, Mr. Sneed. On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
No, because I don't think it's appropriate for the property owner to advertise the property.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
yes,
Ms. McDermott? Yes. Mr. Perry?
yes,
Ms. Radel?
yes,
Ms. Sedman?
yes,
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
10 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. Motion to adopt the ordinance authorizing Luzerne County Assessor's Office to approve a homestead exclusion of $48,500 of assessed property for 2020, 2021, and for the Office of Treasurer to disperse funds to eligible property owners from line item. We would need the proper line item obtained through the federal funding from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. This ordinance was introduced and it was postponed. We're bringing it back for the final adoption. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so moved.
Mr. Haas, do we have a second for Mr. Haas?
Second.
Mr. Urban? On the question?
On the question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Haas.
Yeah, thank you again. I'm bringing this forward because if council would have acted 2 months ago, at this point, county property owners would be receiving checks at this point. This is what the ordinance originally called for. And we've seen in the past 2 months, nothing's gotten better. We've seen inflation going up. We've seen other industries slowing down. The spirit of this law is to, again, provide relief for those who are in need of it. It takes 40% out of the entire overall allocation that we receive from the federal government. And I'm bringing this forward because we were promised by the Department of Treasury and the federal government that they would provide a final rule in September. Here we are, the second week of October, and we're still waiting. It's very troubling to me that when the federal government wants to move on something, move very quickly, but they do not provide any rationale, justification. They don't know what's in the bill half the time. We read this bill. We know what is an acceptable use. This is an acceptable use. Those of you who read the interim final rule saw that. We just have to account for it. So I just ask the colleagues to support this, that we can get relief to our people here before the end of the year. And that's essentially the time frame we're looking at. Should we pass this tonight? So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right,
Mr. McGinley, it's Kendra.
Yes, go ahead, Kendra.
I just think that the final reg isn't out, and if we pass this and it comes out and this wasn't allowed, then we're going to be stuck paying back money. So I'd like to make a motion to postpone again until the final regs are out.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Radel to postpone. Do we have a second for Ms. Radel?
Second.
Mr. Snead? So we have a motion now to postpone Ms. Radel and second by Mr. Snead on that question.
And I have the same concerns as Ms. Radel. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we're voting on postpone. We will postpone it until the final regs are out per Ms. Radel's motion, second by Mr. Snead.
Oh.
If you vote yes, we will postpone. You vote no, we go back to the vote on the proposed adoption of the ordinance.
On the
Roll
question,
call,
Mr.
please.
Chair, on the question.
Yes, Mr. Haas.
I just want to be very clear about this. Again, essentially a vote to postpone is a no vote on this. By voting no, members are saying they do not want to release the federal funds to provide relief for the very people it was intended for. If you read the regulations for the interim final rule, it said the list is by no means exhausting. You must account for it. And that the other areas that the Department of Treasury sought to extrapolate from the bill are what their agenda is. This agenda provides relief for our people. A vote to postpone is saying, no, we don't think you need the money right now. Okay, just to be very clear, just like we voted postpone 2 months ago. No, we don't think you need the money right now. So therefore, the people still are out there $600. And again, it's only 40% out of the overall allocation. Thank you.
Ms. Seidman?
Yes, I did a lot of research, Harry. First of all, I believe it is not a legitimate use of the money. And you know that. And when we do vote on
Mr. Haas, please let Ms. Seidman.
and when we
make her
do
statement.
vote on it, I will explain why. And of the people that I've gone to classes with and how it's been explained to me. I also looked at about 20 counties in Pennsylvania today, what they're using their American Rescue Plan money for. Actually, there's only one county that is not waiting for the final regs. The other ones are, they have a website for all these counties where they are asking for input from the community on how they would like to see the money used. And the money should be used for the sake of the community, an investment, a long-term investment, Harry, not a short-term shot in the arm piece of revenue. That is not its purpose. We are to make this community better. And Northampton is the only one that put the money out so far, and they have given $1.87 million to aid small businesses, $5 million for nonprofit grants, $1 million for hotel grants, $1 million to Grow North Company, which I think is for Northampton County, $1 million for roads, $1 million to emergency medical services, $1 million for personal protective equipment, including their vaccination efforts, testing, and hazard pay. Those are the things that these counties are looking at, not a tax rebate. In fact, it's actually forbidden to reduce taxes, and the tax rebate is the way of kind of getting around it, but doing the same thing.
Okay.
If I could,
Anyone
Mr.
else?
Chair.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Perry?
can we hear from the acting county manager?
Oh, sure.
Attorney Crocwell, would you give us your take on it?
Sure. Basically, I would reiterate what I said previously. And to add that, administratively, it sounds like it would be a simple lift, but it does present reporting issues. It would be difficult to monitor and enforce compliance. And as Councilwoman Sedman stated, it is unclear about the economic benefits for all the residents in the county. But having said that, it would be prudent to wait to the final rules. I am equally frustrated, as are the members of the team that are working on the ARP funding. We're waiting for the Treasury to come out. We have this money. We would like to be able to have people who need the money use the money. But again, the most prudent position right now is to wait until the final rules.
Mr. Urban?
Should my colleagues actually decide to postpone it, I would hope that you would bring the vote back before Harry leaves his term of office. Because we don't know or can't anticipate what the federal government's going to do with the final regulations. I would hope that if you decide to hold that sort of philosophy, that you would also hold the line on every other agency or group that comes here looking for American Rescue money until the final regs come out. That includes LCTA and any other entity looking for money from this pot of money until those final regs come out. So I would hope that you hold your line on voting on any matter if that's the case. Quite honestly, though, I think if they do vote to postpone it, Harry, I think, just out of a courtesy, they should bring the votes back before you leave public office, before the end of the year. It's only fair because you brought this up and I'll gladly second it. Some of the issues that I think that you mentioned, Sheila, on that piece of paper, PPE is really short term. You're using it once and throwing it away. So, some of masks and things like that.
It's for COVID relief.
Right. But, in essence, some of those items I think are a shot in the arm as well to nonprofits to help them along.
That's part of the rate, Steve.
Right, I
Nonprofits.
get that, but it's helping them in the short term to get over the COVID, time period. So it's not that you give them the money once and they're going to take off and invest in it, and 20 years down the line, they may or may not be still in existence. So. Like I said, I just hope that you hold the line. If you want to keep that argument with the final regs, then I think that you need to stick with that argument throughout this entire process and wait till the final regs come out for every entity that's looking for money from this county.
Okay. Mr. Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Steve. Honestly, I'm irrelevant here. Really, we should have done this 2 months ago. And I just beg to differ with my colleague there in Northampton County. I disagree with most of the things they spent this money on. They're politicians. They're going to spend it to what's going to benefit them politically. This benefits the people here in Luzerne County who need it most. And again, if you really took the time to look at all the things I sent you all, that if you look at the documentation from the Department of Treasury themselves, from the interim final rule, if you read it yourself, it's talking about relief to homeowners. It talks about that in the language. I sent it to all of you. So Sheila, it's just a little bit disingenuous of you to say that. I agree. No, I didn't interrupt. I understand you want to talk to other people and get their take on it. Most of the counties across the state did not get the windfall we have here. This is a lot of money. All I got is got like $50,000. They got like small amounts of money. This can provide relief to our property owners. It can provide relief to the businesses of whom these property owners support. This is a local infusion to our economy, and it's going to help out our taxpayers here that have been overlooked during this entire crisis, many of them have been forced out of their jobs because of mandates by Governor Wolf and other issues here. This is just a no-brainer. And again, we have to be smarter than the federal government. We know how they roll. We know they don't read their own stuff. We see it all the time. It's extremely frustrating, but that is not an excuse for our inaction here. Please support this, give the property owners a break, exercise some leadership, and let's help out our people. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. I just have one comment. Number one, it says the eligible property owners, and I don't know what that means, eligible. And number two, Mr. Haas, I disagree with you totally to say voting to postpone it is a no vote. I will make that vote when and if we get to that point. I certainly don't want someone tell me that's a no vote. I know what vote I'll make when I have the opportunity. I don't think that's appropriate to say that. So if you vote yes, we postpone it till we have the final regs. If you vote no, we come back to the vote on the ordinance as presented. Roll call, please.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
No.
Mr. Haas,
No.
Ms. Howe,
No,
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
No.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
7 yes, 4 no.
Okay, thank you. Moving down to number 9, motion to approve the recommendation by the real estate committee. So we have a review performed of the appraisal completed by Cheryl Roman for the DeAndrea purchase proposal. Do we have a motion?
Presented.
Mr. Sneed, do we have a second?
Second, Kendra.
I think Ms. McDermott got in a little ahead of you there, Ms. Radel. On the question?
on the question. Mr. DeAndrea followed the procedure that we have. He was told to get an appraisal, he got an appraisal. I think that we started to go down a slippery slope when we start to second guess the appraisal and say, well, you know, we're not sure that we like the appraisal you got. Maybe you should use this appraiser. Maybe you should, you know, I just think it's a slippery slope. He did everything he was expected to do. And I'm going to vote against this.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Urban?
Yeah, I would have to agree with your sentiments, Ms. Avoca. I really think that we shouldn't be reviewing a certified appraiser's work and trying to quote unquote hit a number, you know, that might be suitable for the county, which is not really within the use PAP standards that certified appraisers have to follow. So I don't think we should go down that avenue. I think we should just at this point recommend the property.
Mr. McGinley? Mr. McGinley? I agree with Linda on this as well. And quite honestly, if we're going to review the appraisal, we might as well have just done our own appraisal in the first place and been done with it. Why are we, I mean, somebody's going to have to pay for this review of the appraisal. I think this whole process is upside down totally from repository on backwards. I mean, the ability for us to make the owner advertise, I've made that known. The ability for them to do an appraisal and then us accept it. I think this is totally backward, everything that we're doing here. So I'm not going to support this at all.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, if you're.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes, sir.
I'm taking back my motion. I read this wrong. I'm sorry. I'm taking my motion back.
You're taking your motion back. Do we have someone who's, Ms. McDermott, you were a second? Making the motion now?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
I'll second it then.
Ms. McDermott makes the motion now and Mr. Perry makes a second. And if you remember the presentation by Mr. DeAndrea, when he was here visiting with us 2 weeks ago, he's the one that suggested that we have a review performed because it had been the procedure in the past and he was the one that suggested this. Anyone else?
We talked about it before that there was no procedure. You know, the procedure does have to be changed. This was not written when I came across the, the question of should we give a counter offer? Again, there's no written procedure on it. So that's what real estate committee recommended.
Right.
Had I known that we could have just done a review at that point, then we could have. And again, we all discussed who should pay for the appraisal. And at that time, you know, that's what council decided. It didn't mean that we all agreed on the person, you know, the buyer has to pay for the appraisal. That's what council agreed on.
Well, we never discussed at all the idea of the county ever making a counteroffer. So I'm not surprised that there was nothing in place about that, but there was an idea that for properties over a certain value, appraisal had to be, you had to get an appraisal. So he followed everything he was supposed to do.
And he's also recommended we have the review.
Well, once the county starts talking about making a counteroffer, what was he supposed to say?
I,
He wants to buy the property.
well, and that's fine, but he's the one who suggested that. Yes.
Just a suggestion, I guess it's for the real estate committee. I know we also talked about of having a list of approved appraisers. So we don't have to second guess appraisers when they do value the property. And I think that would be very helpful.
Actually, they do have a couple of different approved appraisers on the list, according to Eddie O'Neill. They do.
Did he use one of them?
Well, we didn't, you know, the county didn't do it at this point. It was left up to Mr. DeAndrea. But we do have several appraisers that the county uses.
Okay.
Mr. McGinley, what's the cost of the review?
I don't,
Well,
we haven't approved having a review, so why, we don't have a cost yet, Mr. Griffin.
Any idea what the cost would be?
I'm not a real estate person. You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, I know. I would think that would be important information for us to know before we vote. Who's paying for
Well,
it?
we've said, I think, and you were one of the advocates that the county should be paying for these things. So I think that's a reasonable request.
Yeah, well, I was also an advocate of fixing the policy altogether, Mr. McGinley, and that didn't happen either.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I
Okay.
agree. And I hope that-
Wait, what did you say about not having the policy finished? Or is that what you said?
Yeah, I said we need to get this policy completed so we have a good policy.
Okay, Mr. Griffith, I've been here for 2 years and I've worked on this policy harder than anybody else before me. So if you get something done on your own, let me see that, because quite honestly, you don't get anything done. I've been working on this.
I did have something done, Ms. McGee. I did have something done and you never gave me the courtesy, put me on the agenda.
You have a lot of nerve pointing finger when all you do.
I had
is bring
something
the
and you didn't put
problems,
me on
and
the
I'm trying to
agenda.
finish this.
Yeah, I had something and you wouldn't put me on the agenda.
All right, please.
I think Ms. McDermott was about to say that she had reached out to someone about the cost of an appraisal, of a review. Was that what you were going to say?
Yes, Mr. Al Rosen was who we mentioned at the last meeting. So I did reach out to him and he said he wouldn't be able to get to it until after October 17th because of his work, which is fine because we're just having the meeting tonight. He thought the cost would be $500, but at this point, I'm not the one who would, you know, we first of all have to decide, and then I'll leave that up to Mr. Eddie O'Neill on if we use him or not.
Well,
But
Mr.
he said
Rosen,
about 2 week turnaround time
I
too.
think Mr. Rosen had done.
He had done it in the past.
And Mr. DeAndrea mentioned his name, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
So wait a minute, before we even vote.
Yep.
So Mr. DeAndrea verbally said that he would welcome a review.
Yes, he did at the podium.
Okay.
And, you know, I think Mr. Durham answered the question about approximate cost, $500.
But he also is offering to purchase it for more than the appraiser appraised it at. He actually has, you know, his offer is higher than what his appraisal was.
Well,
I don't know what you're gonna do if you don't like the review and the review says, you know, it's.
well,
it's
if we
higher.
get to that point, I think that's the decision you have to make.
Mr. McGinley, I have a couple more comments, just quickly. You know, all certified appraisers go through education. They get certified, they get a license, they have insurance, E&O insurance. They all have to follow the same standards. They have to have competency in the areas that they're appraising. You know, you have residential, you have general appraisers that do commercial property. I don't think we should be using any type of approved list to begin with because they're all educated in the same way. And, you know, maybe if you have an approved list, okay, you might want to strike off anybody that has any disciplinary action from the state board. Maybe that might be the avenue you go down. But if you don't have any deficiencies against your license, I think, and you're confident in the Hazleton area, I think maybe a Hazleton appraiser is best suited for the Hazleton area versus somebody from Wilkes-Barre going down and assessing value or have an opinion of value down in Hazleton. Just like, why bring an appraiser from Hazleton up to Wilkes-Barre? They may or may not know the neighborhoods and the comps. So, I think when you're talking about that particular field, they are licensed and they should be able to offer some type of opinion of value. You have somebody that's competent in that area, in the Hazleton area that produced that appraisal and that looks legitimate. And barring that she has any deficiencies or any disciplinary action on her license, I think we should accept it,
Okay,
You're going down a slippery road.
all right. Mr. McDermott made the motion, Mr. Perry made the second to approve the recommendation from the real estate committee. Vote yes, we approve the recommendation. Vote no, we don't approve the recommendation. Roll call.
Mr. Griffin,
Absolutely not.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
No,
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
No.
Mr. Urban,
No.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
7 yes, 4 no.
7 yes, 4 no, motion carries. Number 10, motion to adopt a resolution ratifying decision to appeal Judge Robert J. Schenken's denial of Luzerne County Council petition for preliminary injunction against the Luzerne County Board of Elections related to the placement of the district attorney's seat on the November 2nd, 2021 general election ballot. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Kendra.
Ms. Radel, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. McDermott. Before we get into any discussion, Mr. DeLuca, do you want to comment about the executive session?
You're talking about the executive session discussing the lawsuit?
That's correct.
I don't know what the date and time of that is, Mr.
It
Chair.
was Sunday, 8 a.m.
This past Sunday?
Yeah, Mr. DeLuca wasn't at that meeting.
No, you're right. He wasn't at that meeting. But it was on Sunday at 8 a.m.
October 3rd.
October 3rd. That's correct. And how long did the meeting transpire, Ms. Radel? How long?
I think it was about 45 minutes.
Okay, so it was 8 o'clock till approximately 8:45. All right, so there was an executive session held by council on that time and date in regards to this ratification that we're presenting here tonight. We have a motion and a second. Do we have questions? Ms. Ray, Ms. Saban.
Yes, will we have a problem with the ballot if we appeal this? I mean, the ballots are, to me, the mail-in ballots are coming out a little late anyway. So if we're going along with this decision to appeal, I asked Sam that recently. He said he didn't know. Does that
If I may,
does that hold up our ballot?
No.
Ms. Kokomo?
No, it does not. There are means of rectifying it if the court, the appellate court overrules the trial court's decision. We're preparing for all possibilities.
Other questions? Ms. Howe?
Yep, well, I'm gonna vote against it because I voted against this from the beginning. I think it's the same kind of situation as second guessing the appraiser. There was an opinion offered. Someone didn't like the opinion that was offered, so they got another opinion. And then now we're suing another county entity. And it's not gonna have a practical outcome that is any different, because the same person is gonna be the DA no matter what. So I'm opposing this because I've been opposed to it all along.
Other questions?
Mr. McGinley?
Go ahead.
I thought this was to approve additional funding. Is that?
No, it isn't. It's vote to ratify the action that was done or talked about through the executive session. If this is passed, then the next thing will be to approve funding.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else with questions? I would like to say two things. Number one, I agree with Ms. Houck. We now have a situation where we have a case that's being litigated and 3 different entities of the county are paying legal fees. Ourselves as county council, the district attorney's office, and also our board of elections and registration. So we have 3 different pots of money that are now paying for this litigation. Number 2, in executive session, as we all know, there should be no votes taken. And for us to make a decision or indicate to the attorney that they should move forward with an appeal, I think really tramples on transparency. And I really think that that's something that we should have been talking about this evening. That being said,
Mr. McGinley,
we have a motion and a second to ratify.
on the question, Mr. McGinley.
Yes, go ahead.
When did we make the decision to appeal the judge's decision?
You tell me, Mr. Griffith, because I wasn't part of the executive session. I was traveling that morning and was unable to connect.
Okay.
Obviously, the attorney went ahead and filed an appeal based on some information. Am I correct, Mr. Griffith?
Yes, but I thought the purpose of this vote, from what I was at everybody else was at the executive session. I thought this vote was supposed to be to approve the additional funding.
No, it's very clear here that this is ratification.
I understand what the resolution says, but when did we make the decision? You can't make a decision in executive session.
I agree with that, but obviously the attorney went forward and filed an appeal based on some information.
Oh, well, okay, so we're gonna have to get a legal opinion from somebody here, because I don't think we can make that decision.
I've already discussed it with the solicitor's office, and this is the suggestion that they came forward with.
Who's solicitor? Our solicitor? Our solicitor's office?
As far as how to work with what was done with the appeal.
Well, how did our solicitor's office tell us to go ahead and ratify a decision that was made in executive session?
No, actually, the decision should have never been made in executive session.
Thank you.
But it was, and this is the only way to correct it. You were at the executive session though, right?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was, but I was under the understanding that we were going to approve funding.
But
we couldn't vote to approve funding either in executive session.
No, that's what this vote was supposed to be for, is to approve the funding, because the lawsuit is the lawsuit. We didn't have to do anything as far as telling them to appeal. That's up to the attorneys to decide that.
Well, I disagree with that, Mr. Griffith. I think we asked them to file. We didn't ask them to appeal.
Okay. Well, somebody has to decide how we're going to pay them. That was the issue.
Well, I think first we have to do ratification, then we'll worry about how we have to come up with other funding. Ms. Radel, I think you were trying to come in there.
Yeah, Mr. McGinley and Mr. Griffith, we do have to approve the funding, but right now we were under the original funding that we had. So right now, once we, this is from my understanding, if we could ratify the appeal, then once we go over the 20,000, once we get that bill from the attorney, then we could approve more additional funding to cover that cost. So that's how it's been explained to me. So that's why I would support ratifying the decision we made, and then doing the budget transfer to cover the cost of it after we ratify.
I think Mr. Urban and Ms. Saban.
Yeah, I just also want to go on the record too, that the member of the executive management was on that call for the entire length of time too. I mean, at least on the Zoom call with Mr. Morrow. I mean, I don't think that should have been appropriate that he actually stayed on the call, even if he was checked in. If this was just an executive session meeting with just council members, he was actually silent on the meeting, as probably the Zoom administrator. Don't know if he walked away or didn't walk away though on his side.
Okay, Ms. Sedman?
Yes, if we don't ratify this, what is the outcome?
Mr. DeLuca? Did you hear Ms. Sedman's question?
I mean, honestly, it was a violation of the Sunshine Act to vote in an executive session to take official action. So when I was contacted, because I wasn't part of the executive session, when I was contacted, the only way that county council could sort of forgive it, I guess, as a majority is by ratifying the act of the appeal. It was a Sunshine Act violation. It shouldn't have been voted on in a private executive committee meeting. So this is really, I mean, everyone has to vote their conscience, obviously. But apparently there were enough votes in the executive session to approve it in the first place. My understanding is that there was no approval of additional funds in the executive session, but the vote should have never been taken in executive session to file the appeal. So
Mr. DeLuca, if you vote no, what is the outcome?
The appeal's already been filed.
Right.
You can't back it out.
Well, I think the lawyer should answer that question.
The appeal's already been filed. You can't unfile it.
Thank you.
But, if council votes not to ratify it, that means there's enough votes to ask that the appeal be dismissed or withdrawn. So I would suggest taking another vote to withdraw the appeal. It should have never been voted on in executive session, period.
Any other questions?
There was no vote.
Vito, there was never a vote.
The attorneys, my understanding, and I wasn't there, so I have no idea. I haven't taken part in either side of this lawsuit. My understanding was the attorneys came to discuss the options that council had as a client, and council authorized the attorneys to file the appeal. I mean, there's an implicit cost in authorizing the attorneys to file the appeal. It's not free. We will have to cross the bridge of what we do if enough votes, the council does not have enough votes to ratify the vote in executive session. We'll have to deal with that, but it's a Sunshine Act violation to act in executive session. And this was the only way that I saw it doesn't erase it, it still happened, but at least the official act of council is recorded at a public meeting.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. I have a
Go ahead,
question.
Mr. Ross.
So what about those
Go
of us
ahead.
who didn't, like yourself, those of us who did not attend the executive session? What does this mean now? So now we can't vote either way because it's a violation of the Sunshine Act? I mean, how does that pan out?
Oh, no, you could vote now you're in public. It's a advertised meeting. You could support the motion as if it was presented at the public meeting. If you're in favor of the fact that the appeal was filed, you could vote in favor of it. It doesn't mean, if you weren't at that meeting, it doesn't mean that you violated the Sunshine Act. All it means is that you are in favor of filing the appeal, and that you would have voted in public to file the appeal had the issue been brought before the public.
All right, thanks, Mr. Luca. That's helpful. And Mr. Chair, I agree with what you said earlier. This is a lot of money, but again, this is the result of what happens when the state doesn't do its due diligence and really work through the process. And we keep on doing it here. Everybody's got to read their stuff. That's the lesson here. But thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is the vote to ratify basically the appeal that was filed on behalf of county council through the attorneys of Stevens and Lee. Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
No,
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
No.
8 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention.
8 yes, 3 no, 1 abstention, motion carries. We're down to public comment on non-agenda items. Any member of the public who would like to address council on this time?
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
it's before we have public comment. There was a discussion last week from our last meeting about CCAP. Do we have to address that for Ms. Seidman regarding, because registration is due, or can that wait till the next meeting?
It can wait.
Next meeting, Mr. Griffith. Ms.
Next meeting's okay?
I think
Okay.
it can wait.
So
Okay.
we'll have it on the agenda for next meeting.
All right, and I'll give you the talking points for old business next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Members of the public,
Mr. McGinley, this is Mark Rabo speaking.
go ahead, Mr. Rabo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of what was just said, I mean, as far as sunshine law violations, I couldn't help but, figure as far as I asked the question with regards to Hazleton City purchasing a property through the judicial sale. And I wanted to know the status of that, if the council or the manager or the Office of Law looked into that and what the status was. That's my question. And my comment is with regard to Poseidon pools and also the homestead exclusion. I would like to remind you, Mr. Chairman, and members of council, going back a few years back, in fact, that remember Moon Lake Park and the 7 tubs when that was given away and the debt was still attached? This reminds me, I started getting flashbacks of that time period. And as well as, the Trammell Crow, when they asked for the KOZ extension, which the majority members of council at the time gave the extension. And then 3 weeks later, the property was sold at a $7 million tax-free profit. So, I mean, it's more closer to the Moon Lake Park incident, giveaway. And I think that I would like to applaud Senator Yudichak because he knows how to take care of his people when they retire. Let me tell you something. So that being said, I think that we need to, like Mr. Griffith said, you don't see any tax or homeowners or property owners asking for forgiveness or exemptions, but you see the usual connected few asking for handouts and exemptions and forgiveness. And I think it's a tale of 2 counties here. So I think that we need to be, Luzerne County has to learn how to be even-handed. The courthouse needs to be more even-handed. And I would suggest that the council members and the administration look into seeing how they could further close the gap, if you will, in terms of taking care of residents instead of just the usual, hey, we care about, each other and to heck with the taxpayers. So
Okay, thank you,
I hope
Mr.
that that's
Grable.
taken into consideration. Thank you.
Other members of the public? Other members of the public?
Yes, this is Jess Morgan.
Go ahead, Ms. Morgan.
Yes, I'd like to applaud Harry Haas for trying to do
Ms.
the
Morgan,
right.
excuse me, Ms. Morgan, could you tell me where you reside so we have?
Oh, yes, I live in Dallas, Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would like to applaud Harry Haas, councilman, for trying to seek relief to those of us who need it most about the rebate to homeowners. I think it's horrible that you're tabling this again simply because the council people didn't have the time or inclination to read the bills, to read what you're supposed to be doing. Do your homework. And since Ms. Seidman asked for input from the community, I'll give it to you. Northampton County wanted to build roads, energy, the different things, and that was the only one who stood out and said, we're going to use this money. Although I don't agree with anything they did, at least they had the nerve to stand out and use their money. Steve Urban had a good idea about, other entities flooding, looking for money. I think it would be horrible to give money to anybody else until you check and see if that's what you intend to do, which I guess it is. I think you're stalling until maybe new people get into the office, and then you can get what you want. And I'm just horrified by this council. And I have another issue I want to bring up. The acting manager said that they could put it on the ballot. They would check about that it would be rectified. I want to know how that happens. I'd like to know her answer tonight. How do you put that Sam's not going to be on the ballot, or this is going to go back and forth for another week or so? Do you realize it's 3 weeks until the election and the ballots have to go out? They should have been out last week. And my question to the county council and to the board is, how many ballots were not counted in the primary because they arrived late? And I would like to suggest hundreds. And I wonder if the public knows that. That's all.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So.
Mr. Perry, second.
Second.
Mr. Snee, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition, any abstentions? Unheard. It's now 7:55. We will convene again at 8:05 with the work session, please.
Recording stopped.
Yeah, she has some stuff. So how is this supposedly any different than when they filed the appeal in the Supreme Court?
Oh, well, because council members were informed about this one. That was a surprise. The other one was a surprise. That, I think, is why there was an executive session about it, because of what happened the last time an attorney filed an appeal on his own.
So the Joyce precedent from 2 years ago was what inspired the exec session.
Well, that would be, if I were an attorney and I were involved with this county council, that's what I would do. I would be, otherwise I'd get blacklisted.
Well, up to a point, I think if you talk to the Supreme Court of the United States a week before the presidential
Oh,
election.
they can hear what you're saying.
Well, I'm scared of anybody hears what I'm saying. But I don't have to run for election. So I have a question for you. How is this issue, how is this any different than what Joyce did filed?
You mean the attorneys?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was, first of all, if you read the charter, I don't know if the council has the right to file litigation without approval from the manager. Right?
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, the manager had gone ahead and given them, go ahead, do what you have to do.
I'll worry it.
So that's the difference, I believe.
All right.
Okay?
I really didn't voted in an abundance of caution, I really.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we tried to have a procedure voted on. We talked about it, but then council decided that it was pretty. Yeah, remember? I thought of that after the moving question. It's amazing to have the right situation come up and yeah, maybe they have before, I don't know.
Would you bring lunch?
I brought some snacks. I get little popcorn.
Little popcorn.
Anybody want popcorn? This is the pirate's booty. Oh. Never had it?
No.
Delicious.
Oh, you don't have to share. I brought some.
Decide what you're doing with your time.
Oh my gosh, I'm busier than I ever was.
I'm sure you are.
I think I know.
I work at my church a lot. I want a lot more time for that. I babysit the grandson.
That's good.
So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
How old's your grandson?
3.
Oh, boy. Oh, that's rough.
He wakes up
I'm
at
not
7
gonna be
miles an hour.
Well, they got a lot of energy.
Well, nice. I was just thinking I retired and shouldn't have to wear a mask as much, but, you know.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So, we've been fortunate. I don't think we've had any real problems. So that's the very positive part. How about that school, Central Mountain Middle School, was a staff member committed suicide? Really? In the building.
What happened?
Central Mountain Middle School, which is like around Lock Haven. Yep.
Wow.
Did you say faculty or was it a student?
It said staff member.
What'd they do?
Committed suicide.
Oh my God.
and they came to, I guess it happened like Sunday night. They came in Monday morning, probably janitors and stuff. I guess found it first. So they closed the building and nobody came in the class, which is, and then I guess they brought in all the coroner's office and whatever they have to do with it.
Shame.
Sure, has popcorn there, Robert.
It's my favorite time of the season, leaves.
Oh, leaves, yeah. They're coming down. They're starting to come down. I noticed that the other day when I was out. I was cutting grass Saturday and I noticed this leaves are starting to show up.
Yeah, our yard is, we have tons of trees, so it's a task.
Oh, that'll be to Luzerne, that'll be to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just keep blowing around too.
Well, they blow around.
In the back of my house on the patio, always get caught in the
Yeah, we have a couple trees. Seems like their leaves never drop.
Yeah.
The very last.
Yeah. And I threw out all my flowers. They're still very nice. I just threw them out a couple weeks ago. I said I'm sick of it, sick of watering them. Got rid of those. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I need my gutters. I need the gutters around the house.
You gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, well, we had somebody do it a couple of years ago, but I don't know.
You should get those gutters that keep on.
I know.
You have those?
No, our gutters
I
are
know, I thought that.
cement.
Oh.
They were built with the house.
Okay.
There's a couple different ones, yeah.
Yeah, I have them on my house.
Do you? More?
Came with. Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
They're expensive, don't they?
Oh, no, I know.
I'd like to put them on the front. That's where I have a tree right there.
Yeah.
If you could do that, like just in certain areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to clog up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so much. Then we had something done the way it drains now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Mr. Griffith, are you muted?
I am.
Okay.
Mr. Hawes?
Recording in progress.
Here.
Ms. Howe? Here. Ms. McDermott? Here. Mr. McKinley?
Present.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Ms. Radel?
Here.
Ms. Sedman?
Here.
Mr. Schnee?
Present.
Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Vogt?
Here.
All present.
Okay. Additions or deletions?
Mr. McGinley,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I would like to add a discussion about the payout for Mr. Parsnick at the end of the work session.
Okay, we can do that. We have a motion to approve the agenda with the addition that Mr. Griffith just mentioned.
So,
Mr. Perry? We have a second?
Second.
Ms. Saban, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard, motion carried. Division reports, Ms. Crocomo?
I'm sorry, it took me a while to unmute. My hands aren't that fast anymore. Obviously, council had an opportunity to review the division report. And if there are any questions, you can send them to me. Either myself or I will have the division head respond. But I do want to highlight, with the Division of Corrections, the total average daily population of the main facility and minimal offenders unit for the month of September was 574.5. I just want to commend the COs and the administration to handle that amount of inmates and to make sure that they are peacefully coexisting is really quite extraordinary. Also, with Veterans Affairs, that often goes unnoticed. They had 64 individuals who physically came to the office seeking assistance, and they fielded 873 phone queries. Just tremendous work for the portion of the population that really deserve our attention. And then finally, once again, I want to draw the attention of council to the work at the Sonetary's office. There were 1,016 new cases filed. That's a really, really big docket. So kudos to the Sonetary's office for handling the volume.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? If you have any questions, Mr. Cortland said, please forward them. She'd be happy to supply the information. Number 2, Mr. Sweats, discussion regarding a resolution authorizing use of the American Rescue Plan Act funds for the public financial management, PFM related items. Mr. Sweats.
Thank you, Mr. McGinley. So in front of you on the work session is item 2, using some American Rescue Plan funds for PFM. I would like to say that county administration put this out as an RFP. PFM was a low bidder at $180,000. We are under the assumption that it will all be ARP covered. If any event it is not, the general fund would have to find the money. Our goal is to get this started as soon as possible because of the timing. We want to get a plan that starts in January. And as everyone knows, besides the day-to-day in these budget hearings, there is work that needs to be done by county administration with PFM. So we would like to get this done sooner rather than later. We're still following the normal protocol and putting on work session, and we'll get any information council needs, but that's why it's requested. And I'll take any questions.
Questions for Mr. Sweats?
Comment and a question, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mr. Austin.
Yeah, so Mr. Sweats, so will PFM be managing the reporting on the use of the funds, or are they just examining options for the use of the funds?
Definitely examining options. Reporting will always be the final sign off, will be the manager, and it will be done by Budget and Finance. They may assist in reporting, giving some ideas, but it would really be for managing the plan. Ideas like yours and others that Ms. Sadman mentioned, or some even outside the box. Our idea is to grab a wide net. Obviously, they deal with more than one county, and in more than one county, not just in Pennsylvania. So our thought is to have them give us ideas to manage the plan.
Because, and I appreciate that, and I respect PFM very much. I appreciate Mr. Scheer whenever he comes, but that's 180,000 out the door. And again, the interim final rule is just very clear. There's just a lot of options out there. I think if we really want to take the Councilwoman Statement approach, we want to cast a wide net and get public input and not necessarily from the money manager. I would much rather see $180,000 spent to the appropriate managing of the funds once they're expended. But again, I'm just one person.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. McGinley?
Yes, Ms. Griffin.
Listen, I think it's time we start doing our own work in-house and stop farming this stuff out to everybody else. If we don't have the staff in this county to be able to figure this out, maybe we need to think about the staff that we have. We're spending $180,000 for PFM to come in and do something that we could probably be doing on our own through CCAP and everybody else. We've just spent $70,000 on a consultant. We spent,
Thank you, Walter.
I can't, what's that? I can't think of how much money we probably spent on trout pepper. I think it's time that we start working in-house, doing our own thing, and stop throwing money out the door to other outside entities to do this work for us. That's why we pay a manager $130,000 a year. That's why we pay budget and finance almost $90,000 a year. We have people getting paid big money. That's what they should be doing, their job. I think this is their job. This isn't somebody else's. And we can get resources from 66 other counties. We have a plethora of places to get resources from that we could use instead of spending $180,000. I will not support this if it comes to a motion. If we can't support giving money to the taxpayers in a homestead exemption, I'm certainly not going to pay $180,000 for an outside entity to make some money out of this $112 million.
Okay, anyone else?
When council's done, if I can respond, but I'll let council go first. It is their meeting.
Anyone else, please, from council? Okay, Mr. Swets.
I would just like to say that earlier in this meeting, we talked about the change in responsibilities of the clerk of council. If anyone thinks that budget and finance hasn't had responsibilities change in the last 2 years, when you see the number of agenda submittals, I don't know what planet you're on. I hate to be this way. I hear Mr. DeMauro during budget hearings cry for staff. We are severely understaffed for the prior work we did, yet alone this current additional work. I personally don't care, have a dog in the fight if PFM gets approved or not. It's not a plan that my team could do. We've always had a firm do it in the past, and that was before any CARES or ARP money. That was one of the reasons that in the last administration submittal, we were asking for office administrator. I can also send council that in the Lipton report, which was pre-COVID, there was a request for 3 to 5 people by an independent consultant. I think we're woefully understaffed and we could find money for other departments and divisions, but budget and finance is just supposed to do more. And I'm on every meeting. I have no problem on every meeting. I am the division head and anything that goes right or wrong goes through me. But I feel it's time to stick up for the division. If others can ask, I'm going to make a statement tonight. That's all.
Well, and you'll have another chance when we deal with the budget and finance budget.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
And I certainly agree with you, Brian. I think the staff is doing a lot of work. I'm not saying just exclusively budget and finance. I'm saying the manager, other people in the county we have other resources that we can use. And I don't know if you were clear, was this PFM done by RFP or was this just somebody we decided we were going to grab? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, it was an RFP. We had it out. It went through purchasing. I know they were the lowest bids off the top of my head. I don't know how many bids came in, but I know they were the lowest bid and there was an RFP done.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay, number 3, discussion regarding a resolution authorizing the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds on various information technology projects. Mr. DeMauro?
Yes, thank you. All right, so there are 3 major projects involved in this request. The first one involves cybersecurity. And as I mentioned in the submittal, cybersecurity is a very serious issue. We have learned a lot since the cyber attack 2 years ago. And one of the areas that we're still, I don't want to say lacking, but still need more strength in is identity management and zero trust. It's an area where right now we trust our users, not just to do the right thing, but also to protect their credentials. And as I pointed out, 85% of successful attacks involve some form of human engineering or scam, which cons users into either giving away their credentials or assisting a scammer unknowingly. So this is a project that would really close that hole by not leaving trust open, but by doing 2 things. One thing we call zero trust, which really kind of locks a lot of doors and without making the legitimate end user go through too many hoops and whistles, still allows us to validate who they are throughout the process over and over again. The other thing is identity management, which allows us to better control a person's identity on our system so that they're not, so that scammers, for example, can't easily masquerade as legitimate users. So this is a very important thing that we need to address, and it's one of the 3 projects. Another project is the virtual infrastructure. Our current infrastructure goes end of life starting next year. It's a very large project that we need to start in time to complete before the equipment goes end of life, at which point we'll no longer have support for it. And if we have an issue, a hardware failure, any other issue with it outside of manufacturer support, then of course the system becomes unreliable or doesn't work, to be blunt. And this is a system that the entire county is operating. Piece of that we let lapse. The new technology incorporates a lot of cybersecurity enhancements that weren't available back in 2012 when the county originally purchased the original virtualization system. And I should mention that out of the virtual infrastructure project, the hardware alone is expected to cost in the neighborhood of $820,000. That at list prices, we could have expected to pay over $2.8 million for that same hardware. But we're looking at both manufacturer discounts being available to us, as well as trade-ins on some of our older equipment and competitive upgrades. So it's a huge savings over what the project could cost. And again, like I said, it's a project that absolutely needs to be done in the extremely near future. And if not for pandemic funds, it would also have to be somehow worked into the capital plan. And then the last component of this submittal is the ability to run these virtual meetings that we're holding here tonight. So far, over the last year or so, the virtual meetings have been a large burden on the workload of the IT department, and at a cost of getting some other very critical projects completed, not the least of which is the Windows 20H2 version upgrade, which is absolutely required for us to continue to get security patches and other updates for our Windows workstations. So it's work that the IT department needs to get back to doing. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for Mr. DeMauro? Mr. Howe?
I have a question. Mr. DeMauro, it's a nice agenda submittal, very thorough.
Thank you.
What is cost by tranche? What is that?
The ARP funds, American Rescue Plan Act, is they call them tranches. So the first tranche is what we received, the $56 million that we received in May, and the second tranche is expected next summer. So just to give you a more aligned budget to the way the Treasury is dispersing those funds, I separated that way, as well as fiscal year, because the tranches don't respect fiscal years.
Thanks. I never heard that term before, and I couldn't find it in the discussion anywhere, so thank you.
Other question? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just one more
I'm
thing.
sorry.
The last line of your discussion point says the department recommends utilizing a contractor to perform all tasks associated with online meetings. Would that be like outsourcing the work that you're currently doing now?
Right, and I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. That was for the virtual meetings?
Yes.
Or for, yes. Okay, yes, because like I said, the IT department is now behind, not just behind schedule, but behind the 8 ball with getting some other projects completed. And we really need all of our staffing to work on those projects, and not just the council meetings, which now are going to be weekly with budget hearings, but also the election meetings, and all the other committee meetings and things that we've been running. It's really is a full-time job.
Okay, so when you have virtual meeting support of $185,000 for each of the 2 years, 2022 and 2023, is that the cost of, or your estimated cost of a contractor?
Yeah, $35,000 a year of that is the cost for the Zoom software licenses that we run the meetings with. The balance is for the contractors to do the work of hosting the meetings, scheduling the meetings, configuring the meetings, and all the other day-to-day tasks that are required to keep that up.
Did you do any kind of a cost analysis versus, between hiring a contractor to do it and having an employee do it, like maybe adding a new position to do that?
Certainly, if we added a position, it would cost less on the surface. What the actual employee cost is with benefits, et cetera, is more a question for budget and finance. But the per hour cost of a contractor versus the per hour cost of an employee, of course, is a significant difference.
Right, but that's why I asked if you did a cost analysis of that before making that recommendation.
We did not do a complete cost analysis to tell you how much we can save by hiring a separate employee to do that. And again, another employee would, either be in a permanent position or it would be a defined length term. As far as using the coronavirus pandemic funds, of course, we can only go out to 2023. We have no idea how much longer the pandemic is going to last. It's going to necessitate this style of meetings. I do know that council has already stated that they would be interested in continuing hybrid meetings indefinitely, even after the pandemic ends, because it's a service to the public. So I really don't know if we're looking at a permanent employee forever versus an employee that we would hire for 2 years and then their service would be over, or like well, again, another subcontractor would end up being a contractor and end up costing close to the same as what we're estimating right now.
So your recommendation here is only for the use of that arrow money then, right? For the
Correct.
contractor? Okay.
Correct, because we can go out to
I really
2020.
do think, I do think that with the, online meetings and online access, I think you're not gonna unring the bell. I think that it's probably here for a while. But this one is specifically dealing with using that money, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Hey, Mr. Morrow, thanks for coming out tonight. And I think you spoke about this briefly, but I just want to get some clarification. So the first round of COVID funds, the relief funds from 2020, how much was IT able to utilize from that pot of funding to cover your proposal here?
So far we haven't utilized any funding from that pot. So far, for some projects that we've had to start, for example, some of these meetings, we've used general funds, IT department money, and that is further putting us behind on some other projects that we really needed to accomplish, but the virtual meetings were more important to get to right now. We're hoping that we can have some of that money reimbursed if this project is approved. If not, my fear would be that we would have to increase the general fund proposed budget for IT for next year if we needed to push those projects into 2022 and still accomplish them.
Okay, so because I those funds haven't been exhausted, I just think even if it only gets us till 2023, it's making your department more effective, more efficient. It's getting the job done. So maybe management can come alongside you and really harness that funding stream.
We hope to.
Okay. Because again, the 2020, there's no doubt in my mind the 2021 funds are an appropriate use for what you're talking about, but I think we already have some funding available there that if we really use that, I think this conversation at least becomes moot. But I don't know, maybe Matt has something to say about that.
Yeah, that
But,
might be more of a question for Budget and Finance.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, again, just something to consider, but the proposal isn't terrible. All right, and I understand your needs. Thank you.
Mr. Urban?
Mr. DeMauro, I mean, I know like over the years, we've heard like other projects. I know I was just looking at sort of the state of the county when Mr. Pedro was county manager back in February 2017. He had on his PowerPoint presentation at that time that there was 98% like a server virtualization completion. So is this taking your virtualization environment to the next level as far as security, or is this just, I mean, where'd all the money go as far as in the past that you asked for, like the millions? I thought maybe those servers should have been updated over the last few years.
Right, and we did expand our virtualization environment over the last few years. And as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at the potential to save about $2 million in cost. Some of that is discount that I'm sure everyone gets, but also a large chunk of that is in buybacks that we would be selling back to the manufacturer, or competitive upgrades that the manufacturer would take the competitor's equipment that we have here and give us a further discount on that. So we are getting, not only do we get the use of that equipment over the years, but we are going to get a credit back on that equipment as we upgrade to some newer state-of-the-art equipment that is expected to last another 7 years or so at least.
I mean, what's your policy or internal life cycle on equipment now? You know, what kind of like, I mean, planning do you have as far as life cycle on the servers and maybe even the desktops and computers in the county? Do you do a 3 to 5 year plan or what?
I would love to do a 3 to 5 year plan for workstation hardware. It's closer to 5 to 7. But for the virtualization environment and the infrastructure of the county, the plan is not so much to say we're going to renew things every 3 years, every 4 years, every 5 years, but to get the newest equipment we could buy that has the furthest life cycle out, so that the end of life dates are dictated by the manufacturers. That's how long they're willing to support equipment. So equipment they're selling today, they may go out 7 years, 8 years, and say it's guaranteed to be supported for that long. But after that, it's no longer supported. You can't buy a maintenance contract on it. You can't get support for it. For a system that runs the entire county, and we saw it during the cyber attack, if the computer system is down, you saw what happens if the county can't operate. We certainly don't want that again with the cyber attack. We also don't want to put ourselves at risk of a similar situation for obsolete equipment. I would say that right now, maybe every 6 to 9 months, we have a hardware failure with a critical component, and we have redundancy built in, so we can continue to operate even though one piece of equipment fails. But we have support contracts, and the manufacturer will overnight us a new component. We'll swap it, send the old one back, the defective one back, and we're back up to running at full capacity. We're not degraded. If we go and try to keep equipment that the manufacturer no longer supports, this failure of equipment that happens every so often now becomes catastrophic, because, okay, one component fails and we have redundancy built in, nothing bad happens, but we can't replace it. So now another piece of equipment will fail, and now we have a complete failure because the redundancy is gone, and we failed to, another component failed, and the system doesn't run at all. And at that point, it's way too late to start a project, because then we have to find the funding, and a project like this could take 9 months to complete. Certainly, we can't have the county without computers for 9 months. So it's absolutely critical that we, for our infrastructure, all of our components are supported by the manufacturer and under a maintenance contract.
I mean, I get all that. I mean, where I work, we have agreements on equipment that's end of life. Actually, there are outside entities that will still support outdated equipment, hard drives and things like that. Hard drives do fail and you have the component maybe laying on hand and you just hot swap it. It takes all of 2 seconds to really change it out when it fails, because you get a meeting or an email or something to that nature if you have your system set up properly. Quite honestly, I understand the need for identity management and all of that. I mean, I've had a recent conversation with our security architect in our company, and it is days versus weeks that hackers will exploit systems in today's day and age. I get that. I mean, as far as the meeting process and whatnot, I don't think it's really necessary to have a warm body just to basically run all these meetings. I think you need to develop a plan to maybe train your people and train individuals on how to use the meeting environments themselves. I mean, where I work, we have 25,000 people, and I'm not there babying anybody on Polycom or Teams or Zoom every single day. You give them a bridge. I have my own bridge number. I can set up my own meetings that outside people can join in on them. Inside people can join in on them. I could, set it up with the Polycom system like we have here. Quite honestly, and the public or whoever I send an invite to can join without any problems. So I don't understand why we have so many problems here at times with some of the technology that's very basic in my mind, because I use it, I use a lot of it every day. I do understand the identity system and the need for something like that. Maybe in the future with IT being such a big and integral part of any business or any government agency or county or municipality, maybe we need to have a committee with council members on it that maybe, get you all on the same page in modern times here. I mean, but I don't think another warm body just to do meetings is necessary. I surely don't spend a lot of my time during the day supporting meetings where I work. Like I said, people plan their own, they send an email out. Outlook would actually put it into like the Polycom system and auto accept the meeting, and put it on the calendar. So maybe your processes need to be honed and developed a little bit better so automation can occur properly. But quite honestly, maybe you and I should have a side conversation afterwards one of these days on how to bring your technology up a little bit better for 1,500 people. And where I work, we have 25,000 people.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just asked that this not be brought forward to a voting session next week for 2 reasons. Number one, not because I don't appreciate the work, but I'm talking, sir. But about Mr. DeMauro, what he said there, I understand the needs of that department. I know it's very tough, and I appreciate him and the team's work. But this council just voted to postpone based on the statement that, well, we don't know how these funds should be expended at all. So again, I think we should postpone that. But secondly, and more importantly, I think there might be other funds from 2020. I would like to hear Budget and Finance, I hear management weigh in about if there are other funding sources available before we dip into that 2021 funds. And again, I hope we don't just hire PFM to come and tell us in here that it's acceptable use, which if you read the document, I think what Mr. Morrow has said is acceptable. But again, we don't want to make any rash decisions here. So we're not entertaining that. And again, I'm being sarcastic about that. So again, if we could have management weigh in to see if we have 2020 funds available to help him out in that department, I think we should do that before we move this forward to a vote.
Okay.
Mr. McGinley? Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
I have something for Mr. DeMauro. I looked at his proposal here and quite frankly, I just don't get the fact that we need 1.8 million. It just seems like we have 112 million and everybody wants a piece of it, except certain people who don't get a chance to get any of it. The taxpayers for one. The concern that I have here is we're talking about hiring somebody to do virtual meetings. The virtual meetings are done by Wilkes-Barre City and every other entity. If anybody's here has attended meetings, I know most of us do virtually. I attend a lot of virtual meetings and nobody has an IT guy does that. Wilkes-Barre City does their own meetings on YouTube. Other entities do them. They don't have somebody sitting there running the meeting. I don't know why this is so difficult to do. And if it's not that difficult to do, we should train people on, like, one person on council can do it for council. One person on each committee should be trained on how to do it. One person on each board should be trained on how to do it if they can. If they can't, well, then, we'll know that, but at least take the effort to try and do a virtual classroom of some sort to try and train people to do this on their own. This is really simple. If we're paying $35,000 for the license to run these meetings, can't be that difficult. I just don't understand why we have to go out and spend $150,000 to pay for somebody to do this every year. At how many meetings a year is he going to be used? I mean, that's a lot of money, $150,000 for somebody just to do that. But what I find is very interesting is we have a time clock system that doesn't work. We have a website that's in a state of disarray that nobody could find anything on. We paid $250,000 for. We have virtual meetings that are off the rails most times. Sometimes they don't even put the right link up and meetings are canceled. We have a website up here right now that says Kingston Boroughs having a residential paper shredding event, yet the event is being held at Kingston Township. It's on the website incorrectly. And there's nothing in the proposal anywhere about any of these issues. Yet we don't have a time clock to mandate how people check in and check out. That's not a priority in the IT department. Is that not a priority for you, Mauro?
Oh, no, I put together a proposal for a time clock upgrade.
Wouldn't that be, that would be better money for the American Recovery money than this nonsense. I think getting a time clock system is critical. Wouldn't you think that would be critical money for the time for the system? That would benefit the taxpayers because then people would be actually paid for the time they work. The website would be to fix the website so somebody could actually find something. That would be something that would be beneficial to the taxpayers. Yet nothing in your report says anything about fixing a website or any of this other stuff. I just find that the ability for us to take now $2 million, we're up to now, 1.8 from you and 180,000 from the other. Where everybody wants somebody to give this American Recovery money so we can help them do their job, of which we're paying salaries for people to do that. I just don't get it. This money was not supposed to be to help county employees get away from doing work. This money was supposed to help the people of this county across the board. It was supposed to benefit everybody in the county, not just the employed. So I just find a real problem. I find a real problem with this proposal.
Yeah, and this proposal is not to assist the employees of the IT department or any other department. This is to provide service.
Tomorrow, finish, please.
These projects are to provide services to Luzerne County residents. And like I said, I mean, if, what happens when the system fails out of support? That's something that is not an option. And if that's something that we can't accomplish with these funds, it's something that we're going to have to accomplish with capital funds. And there really is not an option there and to keep Luzerne County running for another year.
Okay.
Well, I just think that the ability for us to not address the critical issues is something that's very, very important. And I think we are trying to help that department. Have you been over to the voter warehouse lately and looked at the power cords hanging there?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, he's the IT guy. I think it's pertinent. We're in a work session. I wanted to ask him about that.
Yeah,
that's okay. Well, it'll be something for the fire inspector to look at. That's what it'll be.
And
Thank you.
Probably should be, but that's something that you're right.
Well, that'll probably happen tomorrow.
Well, you've done that before, I think, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And one last comment.
Well, Mr. Urban, I think we've had a lot of discussion.
You get to talk about, I'll just speak just in 30 seconds here.
30 seconds?
Yeah.
You got it, 30 seconds.
Mr. DeMauro, I mean, putting in all this great technology is fine, but I think to Mr. Griffith's, with his opinion, my opinion, you don't know how to use the technology that you have in place right now. And the most basic services, like the embarrassment of the county website and trying to navigate it, need to be corrected before we give you this advanced technology. I think you need to learn the basics before you can basically drive the BMW. You got to learn how to drive a stick shift first.
Okay. Number 4, discussion regarding resolution requesting a multimodal transportation fund grant for the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Ms. Corcoran?
I have Mr. O'Neill on the line who will be responding to this.
Go ahead. Please.
Good evening, members of council. The grant before you is proposed for Broadway Road in Ross Township, a portion of Broadway Road that we would like to add a bicycle path to. As you are aware, the multimodal grants require us to offer alternative means of transportation in addition to motorists. We have been using them and adding bike paths where we are able to do so. And this one is one of the roads that we received quite a few complaints about as far as its condition, and also meets the requirement of having the right of way and space able to add an additional 10 feet of cart width in order to provide a 5-foot bike lane on each side of the road.
Okay, questions for Mr. O'Neill?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The only question I have is, this is to designate, actually, this is to designate the acting county manager. That's the purpose of this resolution, isn't it? To designate Ms. Carpino to execute the documents?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So what, I mean, how long is this going to take? Because at some point there will be a manager and he won't be the acting county manager anymore. So do we need to provide some kind of something about that? Like when do you expect this all to take place?
If I just can add, when I became acting county manager, PennDOT required that because of my capacity that I sign. So when a permanent county manager is put into place, we notify PennDOT, and then they send all the information again for signatures. So that's the process with PennDOT.
And then would we have to designate another person?
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of know what happens there. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Question, Mr. McGinn?
Yes.
On this, with this money, is it a requirement that we need to put the bike paths in, or can we use that macadam for other roads, or maybe a couple extra feet on other roads that are in bad condition?
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes, if I heard that, I'm sorry, I think I heard the question from Mr. Urban. No, we are required to somehow incorporate an additional means of utilizing the roadways for transportation. So we cannot simply use it to pave a road. By adding the bike paths, that's what qualifies it for the multimodal grant program.
Okay, so I mean, I understand that like members of the public, want us to fix the roads, but sometimes some of these roads aren't traveled with many bicycles. And I think they need to maybe the state needs to prioritize what they want to spend money on and fix the most basic means of the actual road itself before you go and add additional roadway on the sides of the roads like bike paths. Might be something that we need to address with our state legislature. Thank you.
Okay. Number 5, discussion regarding a resolution authorizing the county manager to execute his license to utilize premises agreement with Hughestown Utilities.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. That last agenda item, can I just ask Mr. O'Neill a couple questions about it?
Well, Mr. Haas, I think Mr. O'Neill's going to speak to this also, so go ahead.
All right, no, okay. Well, again, and Eddie, I appreciate what you do as well. And when we look at Broadway Road out there, I mean, it's extremely rural. I don't think anybody is a believer that that's going to be used for bike commuters to go to work out there. But are we leveraging this to get the road paved? I mean, is that really what this comes down to? Aside from providing some recreation?
That's correct.
Okay. And I mean, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We're trying to make as much use of the grant funding that is available in order to try to get our roads improved and brought up to speed.
Yeah, and like I said, I appreciate you thinking outside the box. I totally get it. Does that also mean we're gonna have to cut into people's property? And if we're gonna add 5 foot on each side, I'm guessing we gotta widen the roads through that
We
stretch.
do have to widen roads, but keep in mind, we have a 50-foot right of way throughout most of the roadways in Luzerne County. So we have the room to take or add the bike lanes, but there are certain areas because of bridges, because of swales, because of drainage, that we don't have that additional 5 feet on each side of the road.
Okay.
The roads are just too narrow.
Okay.
Again, there were 2 considerations to be made. What roads are in most dire need of repair work? And of those, which are we able to comfortably or, physically add 10 feet of cart width to?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't want to, I know your professionalism and I know what your staff does, but I don't want to come across like I'm poo-pooing that. I just want to make sure that, we're not leveraging funds, but at the same time, upsetting a lot of residents that are out there. Cause I think any council would probably agree, any member, that's my number one complaint. I get different roads that pop up from time to time. And, have the supervisors from Ross and or Union Township, have they been informed of this? Have they given you any feedback about this, about what if their people would be for a widening on this stretch of road?
Well, at this point, we have not reached out to them. We can look into doing that. But again, this was just, this is just the early steps of trying to get the application prepared and submitted. So, we could certainly do that in the days of following.
Oh, wonderful. No, thanks for thinking outside the box and, let's cast our bread upon the water, see what happens. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well.
Okay, Mr. O'Neill, number 5.
I can speak to that. I believe Mr. Flesh is on the line as well. He has been working with UGI on this.
Whoever you think.
Mr. Flesh, are you available? Okay. I can handle this. UGI is looking to locate a gas line on our bridge. This is a pretty common application. And what they typically do is offer a fee in order to do that covers any and all costs and usually slightly above and beyond that. But any and all costs associated with having our consultant review the plans, the application, and make sure that it would not have any detrimental effects to our structure or have any issues as far as weight loading. So the fee that they are offering is more than covering that cost that the county will incur. And they are looking to have that line located on the bridge. We have many other structures throughout the county where we have utilities attached to our structures.
Okay. Questions?
Just to clarify, this is electric and not gas, right?
It is electric.
You said gas.
I'm sorry, my mistake. It is electric. You're correct.
Okay.
My question is, Mr. Chair, for Mr. O'Neill too. What
Go
would
ahead,
that mean?
Mr. Ross.
Thank you. Well, Mr. O'Neill, what would that mean for the aesthetics of that bridge? That's a relatively new bridge. It's actually a nice span across from Mock to Stickshinny there. What would that look like? Would it be an eyesore? Would it be kind of hidden next to the side? What does UGI propose exactly?
I would have to get a copy of the plans to give you the specifics, and I do not have that information available to me at this moment. But I can tell you that the line is relatively small, and no, I do not believe that in any of the bridges that I have seen utility lines located, there are any kind of eyesores that people would even take notice of.
Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah. If in the meantime, in the next couple, if it's not too much trouble, I don't want to be that guy, but if you have any extra pictures at your disposal, maybe you could send it to us too. I'd appreciate that personally.
Yep.
And same kind of thing. If folks in Chickshinny Borough or over there in Conyngham Township, I'd like to see their feedback too, but I know you're busy and
I will have either myself or my staff follow up on those two items and get that information to council.
Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Okay. The item that we added, the payout that was provided for Mr. Parsnick, Mr. Griffith.
Yes, I just wanted to know from Ms. Kokomo regarding Mr. Parsnick's payout. Because he was a division head, and I know you did answer this question by email, who keeps track of the time for the division heads?
I don't understand what you mean. The division heads put their time into Chronos, and it's calculated through Chronos. And then because Chronos is our timekeeping system.
Right.
So
Yeah, but what I'm saying is when they want to take a day off, who puts in the system that they took a day off? They do?
they notify, the division heads notify me that they're taking a day off.
So there is, okay, so Mr. Parsnick notified you of all those days that he took off?
Absolutely not, because I only started in July, and you know, they're that amount and that payout really refers to my before my tenure.
Is that a policy to all division heads that if they take time off, they report to the manager?
They report to me when they're taking time off, and when I take time off, I report it to Jen Thomas, and she puts my time in.
No, yeah, okay.
But the
so
division heads put their time in on their own usually. I don't do it.
Right. So and that's goes to my question that I had with Mr. Demaro is we have absolutely no way to know whether Mr. Parsnick was here every day and got paid for his sick, or he took every single day off and got paid for his sick. We have no way to know that. But that goes to the flaw of accounting for people's time that I've been raising for the last couple of meetings. And I think that's an important thing to take note of, because that's why we put the time clocks in, is the fact that we don't have any way for the division heads, and consequently goes to Mr. Urban's point, is division heads probably should not be included in that criteria, that when they work here and they leave, they get paid for their sick or annual or vacation time, because they are salaried, they are high exempt employees, and there is no requirement that they have to actually be here every single day. They have to be here as they're required, but there's no way to track their time as a division head because they are an exempt employee. So I just have a concern about the fact that we just paid Mr. Parsnick over $12,000 and nobody has any idea whether the guy was here or he wasn't here. We have no way to know that other than his time that he entered.
Okay. Moving over to the second page. We have 3 items that we normally do the first night when the budget is presented: retirement, debt service, and reserve. And you have sheets in front of you that, provided by the budget and finance, indicate any changes in those 3 particular items. Mr. Sweats?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first one is retirement. That is the county's ARC payment. We get a letter from the actuary, Mr. Sum from Boomershine. His letter at the end of August stated that he thought the maximum would be 14.4 million all in. We left it at 14.2, which was last year's. The 10.8 million is the general fund contribution. I think everyone realizes we don't just have general fund employees. The retirement percentage is across the board for all employees. It's based on their pay rate divided by the retirement. So you get the dollar amount divided by the salary, and that's how you get the percentage. That percentage is then used across the board. So we left it the same as last year. That was the recommendation we had as of the end of August. Just 2 quick things of note. That was based on us leaving the rate at 7% and also at a 9% return, which I'm not sure we kept after August. But like any time, we have to present a budget at a date certain time. Now, we left it lean in hopes that we can stay there. If we get any subsequent guidance from Mr. Stump, we will come to council and have that guidance. But as of the time we asked for the information, that was their recommendation. Debt service, the next sheet. Debt service has been managed by PFM for multiple years. They came in many years ago to level the debt service payment. And while it's not exactly zero, the process is some bonds are interest only. And as other bonds are paid, then they're paid principal and interest. That's not decided by county administration or budget and finance. That's set up in advance when the bonds are either purchased or refinanced. So this year there's about a $300,000 more in debt service. Last year there was about 1.8 million. But again, the idea was to keep it level so we didn't go from 18 million to 25 million. And the last thing we have is reserve. Obviously, we present a budget in front of council. Council through the many weeks makes any changes, a lot of which goes to the reserve. So we cut the reserve in the direction of trying to make a 0% tax increase. So we went from 698,000 when we started last year down to 250,000. So that's your 3 sheets. My division is presenting next week, but if you have anything on those 3 sheets or my division in general, I'll take that now.
Okay, Ms. Howe.
Yeah, I have a question on the reserve. So in the introductory message for this budget, you estimate that fiscal year 2021 will end with an approximate $500,000 surplus. So that would be in addition to what's in the reserve, because the reserve was part of the budget, right?
Correct, that's correct.
So rough estimate is that we'll end with $1.1 million that was not used for general fund expenses, correct?
That's the idea. I think to the point that, you know, obviously we have some one-time money. We had it last year with CARES and ARP. So when we give you the budget message, meaning the council, the public, and anyone that's on this meeting, that's really non-one-time. So our goal is to get to finish at 0. We think we'll have a slight surplus, and then that would be before reserve. So you are correct.
Yeah, but the reserve is built into the budget. That's how we balance the budget. So there would be, I mean, that's not a general fund expense. That's actually just where we put the money to make sure it balances. So you're looking at probably $1.1 million ahead if things continue on the path they're on.
Yes, we would be.
Right. And then I think this speaks to the question that one of the members of the public asked earlier, what happens to all that money? So where would that $1.1 million be?
And I think you'll see this in the presentation, and I'll give you a high-level answer today because it was answered by the public as well. So more cash we have obviously helps liquidity, and you're going to see a decrease in the ask for the Tran. And one of those things is, you know, outside of the one time, if we have $1 million that goes to the bottom line, that's $1 million in cash, and that's less money that we have to ask for in the future. We have started at 18 million. We got it down to 16 million. The only caution I will have is that county administration, when they present the Tran, that's our one chance for borrowing. We have to have the backup for it. And if we ask for a substantially less amount and something unexplainable like COVID or anything else happens, we can't in February go back and change tax bills or ask for more money. But I plan to have a substantial reduction in the Tran for this upcoming year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and like you said, next week, Budget and Finance will be presenting, so we'll have an opportunity to look at that more closely.
Mr. McGinley?
Chairman? I think Mr. Griffith was first.
Yeah, I just wanted to know where that handout is that I could get it off. Is it on the website, Sharon? That handout from Mr. Sweats or no?
He emailed it.
I emailed it for anyone that wasn't in the meeting, including myself, realizing everyone's not in person. They were
okay.
on the desk, but I emailed it probably 45 minutes or an hour ago.
I got it. All right, I saw it in my email box. Thanks, Brian. I didn't see it there. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Haas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Swett, just 2 questions. One regarding the county debt. What is our aggregate debt to date? I thought we were like about $230 million, but can you help me out with that?
I'm thinking it's a little more than that. Without pulling the number up, I'm thinking it's closer to 240 or 250. But yes, we are substantially down from the 425 million that started. Obviously, you did some refinancings along the way as well. And we obviously paid the debt every year as prescribed. And that's in the budget and a large portion of our budget. One day, hopefully in the near term, 2030 as of today, we won't have this monstrous debt payment. And that would really help to shift county services towards more, more things for the residents that wouldn't come out of the general fund.
Well, four of us here at the table are very aware of that history there. So, thank you for that. Lastly, our reserve account. Can you just give a summary again? How did that decrease over the past couple of years? What did the council program those funds for? The big ticket items, of course.
Sure. So
Talk about the capital fund or the reserve fund, Mr. House?
Reserve fund.
So,
okay.
So I'll just go over quickly. So last year in the audit, there was a huge loss, but most of that was related to the borrowing, which had a huge gain last year. So the county itself had about a $3.1 million surplus. Of that 3.1 million, county council at administration's approval moved about 2.6 million of eligible CARES fund. So if you back that out, our recommendation every year of around 500 to 750,000 would be correct. So we had that $3 million. Year before, it was $24 million, but that included the $21 million that were borrowed for the 911 and voting machine. So in the last 2 years, we have $6 million. That money has helped with liquidity, as also the increase in the real estate market, not only locally, but nationally has helped. And that's one of the ways that we can increase revenue without increasing taxes. But that's why I said in the proposal, you will see a substantial reduction. I don't know if it'll exactly be 6 million. I still need to run the numbers, but you'll see a reduction for the TRAN going forward, which will save not only in interest, but in money that the county is looking to borrow.
Sure. No, I think last year we were at what, 16 million offhand for the TRAN. I forget exactly there.
Yeah,
too.
we started at 18, we went down to 16, and last year was 16.
So
I'm looking at a multi-million-dollar reduction if we can do it. I won't commit to an exact number because it's a little early, but those RFPs go out in November and close in December. With the paperwork, council last meeting in December approves that, and we usually get those funds the first week of January. So it's in process. It will be a reduction, and I'll have a pretty firm number shortly. I don't think it'll be by next meeting, but maybe the next meeting after that, or very shortly thereafter, I'll have an idea of where we are for the TRAN.
No, that's breaking in the TRAN, and then obviously the almost halving of our debt. That's something for county government to really hang its hat on. So bravo to that too. All right, thank you, Mr. Sweats. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Public comment. I have one public comment that was submitted by Denise Williams. My name is Denise Williams. I'm the chairperson of Luzerne County Board of Elections. County Council will soon be interviewing candidates to fill the current vacancy in the Board of Elections. I'm writing a request that the ABC committee members and council members take some things into consideration when interviewing, nominating, and voting for future candidates. First, applicants must be made aware of the responsibilities and time commitment expected of them prior to becoming a member of Board of Elections. There's so much more than being available or present for 5 p.m. Wednesday meetings. I personally spend many hours a week addressing Board of Election work. I hope that the other members are equally dedicated. It is imperative to ask each applicant if they will commit to be present for 5 p.m. Wednesday evening meetings. If they are employed, are they able to be present at that time? The applicants must also be made aware that the board members need to be present for the adjudication process after each election. That would mean being available during the daytime hours for 1.5 to 2 weeks after each election. All members have a responsibility for this aspect of the board's role. The adjudication time commitment must be part of the equation in determining new members. As council members know, it is not just about being present for meetings or adjudication. Much of the work is done before and after the meetings. Preparing for a meeting, doing the necessary homework required to research agenda items, and preparing for informed discussion and votes on agenda items is crucial. Candidates should be asked if they have the time and are willing to commit to being an active member of the Board of Elections. A member who will commit to this necessary work, research, and planning needed for meetings and issues and votes. The board serves all citizens of Luzerne County, citizens of all political affiliations. There is no place for partisanship on the Board of Elections. As chair of the board, I personally have made the following commitments in my service on the board to other board members to all citizens of Luzerne County. Number one, a commitment to fair and impartial and accurate elections. Number two, service on the board through the lens of the non-partisanship. Three, encouragement of a philosophy of continued improvement and transparency. Four, examining the facts of any matter presented and following the Pennsylvania election laws / Pennsylvania Department of State guidance and making informed decisions. I have asked the other board members to let me know at any time if they think I'm not living up to this bar that I've set for myself. I believe that these ideals that the citizens of Luzerne County expect from the election board members to emulate and aspire to in service as a Board of Elections members. Respectfully submitted, Denise Williams, Chair of Luzerne County Elections.
Mr. McGinley. Mr. McGinley, before, Mr. McGinley, I sent you an email on October the 4th regarding the ability for the Administrative Service Division head to come and explain transfers and eliminating positions and stuff. Could we have that happen at the next work session?
Well, our next work session is a budget work session next week. You're talking about 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, well, that'll be fine because, you know, I think it's important that council get a chance to find out why we're doing these eliminating positions and creating positions. And we don't get that.
Mr. Griffith, as you know, we will be meeting all the division heads over the course of the next many weeks.
Okay.
We'll incorporate that into the night that we have the administrative division head here. Make that one of the questions that we'll ask that person to answer, okay?
Yeah, I think that should be changed in our admin code. I think that really is something that needs to be addressed.
All right. Other members of the public, please.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark Rabo speaking.
Go ahead, Mr. Rabo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to reiterate what I said to previous public comment and ask the status of the deed transfer of the property that was purchased by the so-called Hazleton City Land Bank. If the deed transfer from the Tax Claim Bureau is in processing or through the Prothonotari's office, or is that what is the status of that? That's my question. And if there's no answer available, can I get an email response to that status?
Well, I think obviously you can also contact the tax office there to ask that question because they would be the ones that would have that property. So that would be something you can pursue.
I will do that, Mr. Chairman. I would like to also reiterate that if there is no contact by the tax claim office prior to the owner or by the tax claim office putting it up for judicial sale, that's a problem. So that's why I'm asking you guys. And if there's no status update, I would like to know that from the tax claim office. And also, Mr. Chairman, one comment as far as the DA elections go. I would like to remind council of a legislation that's being put through the state Senate by the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Jean Yaw, that Senate Bill 420, modernization of the district attorney modernization bill, which would require the district attorney upon running for office that he must have a law license, a Pennsylvania law license, and in good standing, as well as able to perform the duties of the office prior to being placed on the ballot. I guess this would be in concert with the other legislation that was passed previously. So just wanted you to make me aware.
Other members of the public? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Snee, second. Second. Mr. Perry, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Thank you.
Be
And
safe.
remember, next week, 5:30, we will have a public hearing on the budget, and then we'll follow that with a budget work. Okay.
Recording stopped.